to use Pro Bowl. Okay, here we go. We're preparing to live stream here. But yeah, get after me in the call for that.
Yeah, I'll mention it.
All right, it's starting to set up. Redirect into YouTube now. Okay, I need to grab this link. Right, it's starting to set up. Redirect into YouTube now. Mute that. So YouTube will be like behind in terms of the thread and everything. So like if you were watching on YouTube, they'll be behind us like a half hour. So okay, share the link.
They'll be behind us how long? Half hour?
I think it's like no. Like I think it's like 20 seconds or so. Something like that. Yeah, and less than that. It looks like 10-second maybe difference.
Okay. Yeah, and you know, I've heard that Marquise too. I just kind of confirmed it too from somebody who might know. He had an ankle and a hand injury.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Did you hear about either of those?
I knew the ankle. I didn't know a hand. No.
Yeah, just that type of stuff is so hard to factor in, and
right.
But if a guy is playing at a certain level for a certain amount of time, and then there's a drop off, depending on what it is, you can usually, like I thought Quentin Nelson, last year there was a clear drop off for a few weeks, and he was dealing with like a lower body thing, and he couldn't anchor, stuff like that. When you watch guys enough, you can notice it,
Right. That is a good point. Yeah. That is the hard part. You never really know what kind of some of that stuff is.
Yeah. Even for guys like us who really study it, it's hard. But I mean, especially people who are on the outside, they have no idea.
Hashtag 2020 NFL.
So yeah, I got to bounce just at 1:30 for that podcast. With
1:30 or 2:30? Was it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm an hour behind.
That's right.
Yeah, 2:30.
2:30 my time or 2:30?
2:30. So it's 1:05 now, right?
There. Yeah. It's 1:05 here now. Yeah.
So 2:30 your time.
Right. I forgot.
Yeah.
All right. We're live.
Okay, cool.
Croc is coming. He is running a little bit late because he had an appointment with his car.
All right.
Let him know. Not sure where Ted is. All right. Okay, so you can see my screen, right? And okay, great. There's our board, folks. There's the board. 184 players, I believe, are on it right now. We're going to cut our way down to the top 100 players in the NFL here pretty shortly. Waiting for Ted Wynn to jump on, and we'll be chatting with him. I think Eric Crocker is going to jump on with us too here in a little bit, and we'll have some guests coming in throughout the show as well. But y'all can see the board there, and
it's gonna be fun, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I think the offensive line and defensive line, I know are what you're waiting for.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
but you'll have thoughts on some of these. I know we talked a little bit before, and you had thoughts on some of these quarterbacks and stuff too. And
yeah, I'll have some thoughts on some other guys. I mean, I really like receiver and tight end. I could talk about them, and then maybe some linebacker. Like the further away from the ball, the less I probably watch them. So,
yeah, right, exactly.
but yeah, tight ends for sure. And then I think tight ends pretty easy as far as like, there's a clear like top 4 or 5, and then, I don't think we'll have any more, but we'll see.
Right.
Yeah. And then, yeah, but there's so many freaking offensive and defensive linemen. It's gonna be.
Oh, I know, it's crazy. Yeah, right.
It's gonna be fun.
Ted is trying to get in right now.
All right, cool.
Trying to make sure he has the password to get in. I know they've done these Zoom calls at the Athletic. I know they have. I know he knows how to swing this thing.
Yeah.
At this point, everybody's done like 15 Zoom calls, right?
Right.
At least.
Definitely. Although this is probably my second. So,
Is it your second? Okay. And you got in fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, click the link and you hit accept and,
Right.
He's probably just, finishing something up or something.
All right, maybe we should start with offensive linemen, and as those guys come in here, I resent him that link and everything. So as those guys come in here, we can reverse some of the discussion. But so first thing I thought would be good to do is talk about some of the guys who are going to be locks for this thing.
Yeah, I have my locks on a separate spreadsheet right here.
Okay, so I thought that if we put in the locks, then at that point we'll be able to kind of see where we're at, and we'll do this at each position, but we'll be able to see where we're at a little bit easier. And in terms of getting that last 20, 30 players, whatever it ends up being, it might end up being less than that. Feel free to go above with the locks, even if we need to, and we'll come back to it from there. But I'll keep checking to see where Ted's at and make sure he isn't kept out for whatever reason. So offensive line let's look at offensive tackle first of all. There's obviously a lot of names to choose from. We're not going to spend a ton of time on each guy, but right now, no rush with waiting for these other guys to come in. So,
what's up, Ted?
Ted, you in?
Hey, I think you set the wrong password at first.
Did I?
Because you sent me a different password just now, so I got in with a new password. But the one that you sent earlier.
How'd Brandon get it?
I don't even remember putting in a password. I just clicked the link.
Wow, that's weird. Why would they have two? I just sent whatever Zoom gave me, so I don't know why they'd have two different passwords. But yeah, I'm gonna send Croc the same one that you got, Ted. So he gets in, but Croc is running a little bit behind, and Ben actually had to jump out because Ben had some emergency, he had to run home. But Croc is running a little bit behind because his car's at the shop. So
Kirk's running a little behind too, but he'll jump in whenever he's
okay.
He's good.
Sounds good. Well, Ted, if we started with offensive linemen because Brandon was jumping in here first, would that hurt you much?
No, I literally just started listening right now.
Okay. Yeah. We actually haven't really gotten anywhere too far yet. We were looking at offensive line. We were talking about how we'll put in our locks. First of all, we'll start with putting in our locks, and then from there we'll cut it down some. So as we're thinking about offensive linemen and we're thinking about locks, Brandon kind of already has an idea, I think, of offensive lineman that he's going to want in this grouping. Who stands out to you, Brandon, in the offensive tackle group as you look at this squad? Some of the names we have listed here, who stands out to you as guys that you feel like got to be in a top 100?
So I have 9 guys that I think really, I mean, we could probably go 8, but it's 8 or 9. So for me, Tyron Smith, Teron Armstead, Ronnie Stanley, David Bakhtiari, Mitchell Schwartz, Ryan Ramczyk, Lane Johnson, Lael Collins, and then I would want Trent Williams in, I think, before Lawan, Tunsil, and Bulaga. Just because of what he could be and what I think he probably will be this year. It's tough for me to leave Trent Williams off when you have, you're talking elite players at tackle. So
Okay.
those are kind of the names I had that were locks, but I can make a case for Tunsil and Bulaga as well. I think they certainly deserve to probably be in here.
Right. And we'll probably consider those guys too. But okay, let me ask you this, Ted. How do you feel like we should go about the process of Trent Williams right now? Like if he's healthy and if he's Trent Williams, obviously Trent Williams is in the top. I mean, he might be in the top 30, like maybe higher, if he's Trent Williams. But we have this process of getting 100 players on this list, and that's extremely difficult to do. And now we've got a guy who missed some, last season, and there's kind of been just this with his career in general, kind of been at this crossroads for a while. Do you think should he be included in the locks? Do you feel like ignore that other stuff? We're just going off of what we know Trent Williams has always been when he's on the field.
Well, I think that we should talk about criteria a little bit, right? Because
sure.
Are we going to do it like the NFL Top 100 where they base everything completely on the season before,
Yeah.
or we're just doing this as like, we think this is going to be a top 100 going into next year?
I think, and it's a good question, Ted, and I think fans would have the same question, so it's good that you brought it up. I think, for me, it's kind of like, okay, where do we have it going into this next season? That'll be largely weighted on this past season, I think, in all of our opinions, especially for, kind of up-and-coming players as they kind of maybe a promising 2018, a great 2019, and, we don't have a huge sample size, but it's enough for us to say, we feel like this thing is clearly moving in the right direction at a rate high enough to put him in the top 100. That's kind of my thought process with the whole thing. But what about you, Brandon? What do you think should be in terms of how we break this down? How do you think we should go about it?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that there might be an exception or two, and I think Trent Williams would qualify as
right.
One of those viable exceptions that we can consider, and that's why I mentioned him, just because he is so special. And really, if he is healthy, especially going into the 49ers system, playing for Kyle Shanahan again, and just how he's going to be featured and everything, I mean, he is set up for success, in every sense of the word. It's just really if his health is there, and that's what we don't know for sure. So we're going to, we have to go out on a limb if we're going to talk about him a little bit. But, I would think that the 49ers did their homework enough to where they're comfortable that he's healthy to, give up the compensation that they did, although it wasn't as much as maybe we thought it would be. I still think that they're confident enough that he's healthy, that we could be confident enough that he is going to start the year out healthy. And if that's the case in the system and the environment that he's going to be in, I mean, he could be the best left tackle, best offensive tackle in the NFL in 2020. And to leave somebody like that off, that's tough, but I do think it's an exception. Otherwise I'm with you on going off 19 and stuff,
Sure. Yeah. What about you, Ted? What do you think of that criteria?
Yeah. If we're saying, if we're projecting into 2019, then Trent Williams definitely has to be on that list. I mean, when he left, he was like a top 3 tackle.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And all the things you mentioned, he had rest, he got a chance to get healthy. He's going to be in an offense where, he had a lot of success. So yeah, I agree. He should be on there.
Yeah. Trent Williams, last season, he didn't see the field at all last season. Then it was 13 games in 2018, 10 in 2017. And we've really never seen him not at an elite level of play. And so that's where I think where you're saying, Brandon, makes sense in terms of an exception. This is just, we're talking about a player that literally could be the best player in the league at his position and has been before, and so to not include him feels egregious if we were to do that, even, because of, he didn't play last year, Ben Roethlisberger barely played, and we're going to have that discussion with him too, I'm sure. But, it's still in Trent's situation, it feels like he should be an exception, I think.
Yeah.
And, just because I haven't watched these guys that much, and obviously I trust you, but I'm surprised to see Lyle Collins as a lock and Ramczyk as a lock. But I haven't watched these guys as much as you, so it'd probably be good just to explain to the fans why these guys are locks to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Ramczyk, he just really, well, both of these guys, I think that they just took their game to another level in 2019. And Ramczyk, I mean, from week one, really, when he shut down JJ Watt, and then every other game except maybe 2 or 3 where he had some trouble. I think Jacksonville was one, and there was another one in there. I can't remember off the top of my head where he kind of had some trouble, but I'd say 14 or so out of 16 games, he was, dominant, as a right tackle for the most part, as a run blocker and as a pass blocker. You could see he was good the prior season, but this year, I think he was firmly in that company of Mitchell Schwartz and Lane Johnson for the best right tackle in the league. So, and I think he can only get better, really. They're just in a very offensive line friendly system. Granted, it should be said with him and Teron Armstead, who has had as a lock as well, that Drew Brees helps them look better just because he's so good about getting rid of the ball on time. And it's a night and day difference in terms of pass blocking for Brees and pass blocking for Aaron Rodgers, which is a much more difficult thing. But still, with that said, you still see him go against elite competition and either shut them down or, win the vast majority of the reps in pass pro. And then he could do everything as a run blocker. I mean, first, second, third level type stuff, do
Right.
all that, all the elite type guy stuff. So for me, Ramczyk is like for sure a lock. Collins, I can listen to maybe not being a lock depending on how the board looks, just because his pass pro, I still think took a big jump in 2020. And I think it's at a good to very good level. But if he goes against those elite speed guys, you could still see him maybe not have the same amount of range in pass protection as, a guy like Lane Johnson or Ramczyk. But I think he's the best run blocking right tackle in the NFL. I mean, he is, an old school throwback type of guy, and it works in their system. I mean, he, caves in the first level and really just generates a lot of movement up front. And, he's probably the best run blocker on the team outside of Zach Martin. Like, that's the best right side in the league, I think. And it's because of what Collins did last year in terms of just, he really, probably of all these offensive linemen that we're going to talk about, he probably had the biggest jump from 19 to 20, in my opinion. So I think he has a strong case, but I think Ramczyk has a little bit of a stronger case because of what he does in pass pro.
And we've got 5 left tackles and 4 right tackles in the 9 locks. But other than Brian Bulaga, does it drop off pretty good at right tackle across the league, Brandon?
Yeah, I think so. Bulaga has a case for this as well.
Right.
I mean, just real quick, just what he did the first 6 or 7 weeks of the year going against Von Miller, Khalil Mack, Marcus Lawrence. There was another elite guy in there. I can't think of who it was, but I mean, and he did really well against all those guys. So he had a good year, but he's, older than I think most of these guys on the list, and he's been banged up.
Right.
Although last year was I think the healthiest year he's had in a long time. But yeah, I think after Bulaga and right tackles, as far as right tackles go, I think it is probably a pretty big drop off. It'd probably be another tier, at that point.
Gotcha.
That might be the cutoff.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting the difference in the depth there from left tackle to right tackle. Let's come back to interior offensive line, so we bounce it out a little bit more. We'll come back and hit the O line and more of the D line here in a second. But can we jump to tight ends real quick? Because while we're waiting for Croc to jump on and join us, I feel like tight ends might be a position that we can get out and kind of cut this thing down pretty quickly in terms of who we would lock in at tight end in the top 100. Ted, let's jump to you. Who do you feel like, as you look at this tight end group and you think about a top 100 across the entire NFL and all the players we'll have to include, how many tight ends do you feel like are actually worthy? I've got a big list here of names, but how many tight ends are worthy, do you think, of being considered a top 100 player in the NFL?
I think everybody on your list makes sense to me, except for maybe Hunter Henry. I feel like Hunter Henry has a little more to prove to make the top 100. And it's, he wasn't. How many games did he play last year?
Half the season. I think he's played 2 years in a row. It's been like half the season. I'll check while you're talking, but
yeah, I feel like he has a little more to prove to be in that top list. And Darren Waller, I think, he had one good year, but he showed, so much in that year. He just has high-end athleticism for the position. He's a much better blocker. that people would anticipate for a guy that is that fast at tight end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like that list. Jared Cook is really good, but I mean his blocking is so terrible.
It's true.
Kind of, like you want to be at least a passable blocker, but Cook is so bad sometimes
Right.
that I could make an argument that he shouldn't be on the list. But I like the names on your list. I like Mark Andrews there too. Obviously, George Kittle would be the top guy, and Gronkowski's back, and we'll see where he's at. He was pretty beat up by the time he left the game. But he was still extremely effective, even as beat up as he was. So I'm curious to see what condition Rob Gronkowski will be in when he comes back.
Right. So I think we agree. And Brandon, you tell me, you feel free to jump in if you think I'm wrong or whatever, but we probably agree if we're talking about locks. Is there just two like definite no discussion locks, or are you guys going to vouch for a third one? I know we'll have a discussion coming about Gronkowski here. But would you vouch for a third lock other than Kelsey and Kittle? Not saying everybody else won't get in, but is there another lock outside of Kelsey and Kittle?
I mean, I think those two, Ertz is the closest guy.
Yeah, I think that's the closest.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it'd be hard for me to leave Ertz out of a top 100. He's so good, but I
Yeah.
know from kind of mock running this process that it gets pretty tight pretty fast. So
underrated blocker too. Like I think he was probably pretty bad early on, but he got a lot better lately. So I think
he's like actually like helpful now.
Yeah.
Where early in his career it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
Okay. If we have the Trent Williams discussion, we have to have the Rob Gronkowski discussion, right? It's basically the same thing. I know Gronk retired, so maybe you could argue physically his body may have changed to a point, I don't know if you could, I'm sure he still looks great. He's almost back to his playing weight. Is it the same discussion with Trent Williams? And if Trent's in, Gronkowski wasn't elite maybe in 2018, but he was still really good. Definitely still a top 100 player in the league. Do we think should he be considered a lock if Trent's a lock? Are we making the excitement? We're talking about great players. Like, we said Trent could be the best at his position this season. I don't know if we could go that far with Gronk. I mean, if he's vintage Gronk, right?
Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah. I think he played. He played at such a high level for his entire career, and if he's back to weight, and you think his body's near where it should be, then I think you could make a case that we have faith that Rob Gronkowski is going to be Rob Gronkowski in 2020.
We've never seen him play washed. It's not like he was bad and then, you know what I mean? And then retired. And then like he was still really good in 2018. He wasn't maybe as good as he's been before, which is like maybe best tight end ever level, but certainly a top 100 lock. I mean, in 2018, if he hadn't retired in 2019, we'd have absolutely put him in the top 100 going into the 2019 season. So I feel like that conversation kind of, if Trent's in, then I feel like Gronk almost has to be in, right?
Yeah, I'm good with putting Gronk in, especially in that system, being with Brady and all that, like rejuvenated. I mean, when you're talking about elite type guys who have been the best at their, the best in the league at their position, I don't get as concerned about, he hasn't played football in a year. I think that actually might be more of a positive than a negative for him and Trent.
Right.
So,
yep, I could see that for sure. So, okay, so we'll move Gronk in. Anybody, do we move Ertz in right now? It gets to be a weird discussion because, would you rank Ertz over Gronk right now if you made a list of the NFL's best tight ends? Maybe I
would take Gronk, but that's just because
okay,
like a stylistic thing. I love the way he plays. Like objectively, I think it's really hard to say. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we come back to tight end unless anybody wants to stand on the table for anything there.
Okay. And just one thing I want to mention too, like a bad error on my part. Sorry. I think Trent Brown is a discussion in the tackle list. So we should just add his name on there as well.
I'll add his name.
Yeah. I was looking at depth charts and I just can't believe we forgot him. So I think he's worthy of a mention and possibly an inclusion, over La'el Collins. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit and get your thoughts.
Okay. All right. So maybe La'el Collins is not a lock?
I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, it's so tough with those two. Trent Brown was banged up last year. So it's, I think that kind of maybe soured some people's opinions a little bit of him, but, as a pass protector, that's where I think, he has a little bit of an advantage, because if we're valuing pass protection above run blocking, which, I think most people would do, then Trent Brown has a leg up on La'el Collins there. It's just La'el Collins to me is probably the best run blocker. It's just trying to figure out how much of a difference in each and, balancing that. So I'd love to hear your guys' take on that. But I think Trent Brown certainly has a discussion to be had on his part to go in Collins' spot.
Well, the Raiders guy and Ted Wynn did not mention Trent Brown. So what do you think, Ted?
I'm ashamed that I forgot Trent Brown in this discussion.
I thought you were thinking of him, but
yeah, I guess great tackles are like Brandon's kids. Like he just, he loves them all, and it's hard for him to exclude them. But I agree. I think Trent Brown should definitely be a discussion, especially if we're comparing La'el Collins, to Trent Brown. Trent Brown is more established,
right.
and he's just played in the league a little longer at a high level. So I think that's a discussion worth having for sure.
Right. Okay. All right. We'll add Trent Brown's name down there for discussion. What position you guys want to go next? Pick one here. We got, by the way, Mark Schofield's going to join us about 1:45 to talk quarterbacks, I think. So what can we hit? What should we hit before quarterbacks? What do we want to lock in?
I think the hardest position is going to be edge rusher.
Edge is going to be hard.
That's
wide
the
receiver.
one. I think.
All right. Should we try to tackle edge rusher?
I don't know if you want to save that then, with that said, because it's going to be, it's going to be tough.
Might take us a while. How about linebacker? Do we want to jump on linebacker?
The short list.
We'll be on and pretty soon. So maybe he could help us out with linebackers.
Yeah, Kurt. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll wait on that one till he jumps on.
Defensive tackle, since Brandon is also, D
line.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's talk defensive tackle. Does everyone agree Aaron Donald's a lock?
Yeah.
So.
I don't know.
Win
defensive player of the year last year. I don't know. Should have, probably.
I'm sure somebody on Twitter could make a case against Aaron Donald.
I've seen a lot the last 24 hours.
Instantly.
It should be. Anybody, Aaron Donald, obviously a lock. I'll stand on the table for Cam Hayward. Last couple of years, I think he's been. I mean, you could, after Aaron Donald, you could make the argument easily that he's been the second best defensive tackle in the NFL. I think over the last couple of years, especially as they've kind of turned him loose and let him one gap and turn the pass rush loose. And some of those guys have gotten better up front. I think you've seen him really dominate. So I'll stand on the table for him. Anybody opposed to Hayward going into the locks?
Nope.
No, I don't want to oppose locks. Yeah. I don't think he's two, but I don't think he's not a lock.
Who's your two?
Fletcher Cox.
Oh,
Fletch, man. Yeah.
Ted, you good with Fletch going into the locks?
I think Chris Jones is a lock.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
And Grady Jarrett's a lock.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Anybody disagrees, speak. But I agree with that completely. Those to me might be the five that when you look across the league, I think those are the top, would be my top five.
Yeah.
I think Cam and Chris Jones would fight for two for me. Fletcher and Jarrett would fight between who's fourth and fifth for me. But that would be kind of how I see it. I don't think there's any way you can make a top 100 and leave those guys out. I wouldn't look twice at the list, to be honest.
I think next is probably DeForest Buckner. Like he's probably on.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
I would put him on a top 100, but it's just I could see somebody make an argument against him just because we have 5 already.
We got 6 now, yeah, with Buckner going in there. Who did you say you could make an argument against?
No, I mean I could see how somebody else could make an argument against DeForest Buckner because he might be just on that edge, but I think he belongs in there.
I agree with you. I would agree with that completely. I think it's a really good position group across the NFL, but that's fine. If defensive tackle happens to be way better than running back or linebacker or one of these other position groups, and we've got a ton of guys on there, like I'm not so much worried even about the balance. Just want to get the best guys on there. I personally would put Kenny Clark in the top 100.
Yeah, me too.
Blocks. You've seen a lot of them, Brandon, right? I mean, he's dominant.
Yeah, he was the next guy. I have those. Kenny Clark and Buckner were in red on my list with all the other guys I talked about. So that would be my group for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ted, any disagreement on Kenny Clark or?
Honestly, I haven't watched enough of Kenny Clark to really give a great take on that.
Okay. Great. Yeah.
I think there's one more guy that we should at least talk about who's kind of in the Gronk and Trent Williams discussion a little bit, not totally, as Akeem Hicks. I mean, I think when he's healthy, man, I mean, he's dominant at three technique. Maybe, he doesn't maybe rush the passer the same, on the same level as some of these guys, but in terms of like bull rushing, and he impacts the pocket tremendously. Yep. And I mean, like the way guys talk about him, offensive lineman wise, I mean, like he's pretty respected and feared almost, like people are like, his power and stuff is rare. So it's just, how serious is that elbow injury really? And I know he's kind of up there as well. So that'd be a guy that I would at least throw out there. Calais Campbell, I think, should be at least probably talked about a little bit as well.
Yep.
But Hicks would be my next guy, I think.
Yeah, I really like Calais Campbell as well. Versatility is off the charts.
Right.
He's a guy that's crazy because you can watch him. I watched him against the Bucks when I was scouting some of their offensive linemen. He'll have a play where he gets dumped, and then the next play he throws somebody. And like he just kind of, I wouldn't say his play level is inconsistent, but I just think his ability to bounce back when he's just so big and so tall that sometimes guys get under his pads a little bit. But his ability to come back and still win a 1v1 despite not having the greatest leverage. I mean, he and Hicks are kind of both like that, in my opinion, and that they don't necessarily, Buckner too, you could say they all play like a little bit higher than, if you were filmed, you'd be like, oh, low man wins. You always hear the phrase, but those guys kind of defy that a lot of the time, I think, just because they're so big, long, and strong that sometimes it doesn't even matter if they don't have great pad level. And I find that fascinating to watch as somebody who's kind of all about the technique of defensive line, that those guys win in such unconventional ways.
Yep. Yeah. Those guys are fun to watch. What do you think about Hicks, Ted? Have you watched him a good amount?
Yeah, I mean, God, he's you're right. He's so good too, but it's just put him up, it's hard to put him above, I think, the guys we have on the list. But it's hard to leave him off the top 100 too, because he's so good.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we come back to Hicks and Campbell and Brandon. You and I have talked a lot. We feel like DJ Reader is one of the most underrated players in the league. I don't know if he'll make this list, but
I mean, I'd love to get a nose tackle on there. I mean, Kenny Clark, Kenny Clark's on
that's
there.
right.
So
yep.
He's a nose tackle, but he rushed the passer pretty well last year. So I think that's warranted. But yeah, as many nose tackles as we can get. Let's do it.
Brandon's going to do a separate top 100 nose tackles.
All time.
Yeah. Okay, so we got our locks, maybe a defensive tackle. And we'll come back to Campbell and Hicks with strong consideration for those two, especially. It sounds like we'll see what some of our guests are feeling as they jump in here as we go through. We'll pick their brains on some of the controversies that we've had at different positions. But so let's try. Do we want to tackle interior offensive line now while we're waiting here a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Locks for the interior offensive line group. Brandon, you want to kick us off?
I mean, gosh, I'd like to say 11 or 12.
Manny, Brandon, can't lock all those guys in.
All right. Let's just say 8. Like, these guys have to be on, in my opinion.
Okay.
Then just tell me if I'm crazy. So, Brandon Brooks, Quentin Nelson, Ali Marpet, Rodney Hudson, Jason Kelsey, Richie Incognito, Zach Martin, and Alex Mack. I think, it's tough to, and I really would like to say Brandon Scherf, David DeCastro, and, those two should probably be on there as well, honestly.
Right.
I mean, but
that's
they're all
tough.
elite.
Talk about centers and guards, so there's a lot of good.
Yeah.
Right. This is a deep group for sure, because we're talking about, 3 starters on each NFL team. I'm not good at math, but that's a lot of players. And so there's a lot of range to pick from here. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, like I said, if we go over it, but
I'd like
sure. Are tough.
Yeah. I mean, Jensen, Saffold, Pouncey, I think those guys should probably be on it as well. So those would probably be the guys I would fight for.
Right. What do you think, Ted? Anything jump out of you? You watch Richie Incognito a lot this past season, obviously, and
And
he was dominant.
Yeah, he was dominant this season. And yeah, Saffold to me is one of the best guards in the league. So
he was dominant.
I feel like we probably have to include Saffold just because. I didn't watch him a ton last year, but when I did watch him, he was just destroying guys, like in that Patriots game.
Right.
Yeah. He started off a little slow. I think he got a little banged up early on, but like week 6, week 7 on, he was dominant. So, yeah, I think Saffold is a good one.
Okay.
Yeah. And you saw how much worse. The Rams' offensive line took a bunch of hits, but he was probably one of the biggest losses to that team, and the offense just looked totally different.
Okay, so we got 2 votes to move Saffold in. It sounds like I'm fine with that. I've seen a little bit more of Scherf and DeCastro and really like them as well. Obviously I watched DeCastro a ton being a Steeler guy, and I think he's definitely worthy of consideration for this list. I don't know if I'd lock him yet. I don't know. I mean, he's pretty good though. When I think about it, whether I take him or Saffold, I might go with DeCastro. So I mean, to me, he would be the next guy off this list, I think, because not only is he really good, but even though last year wasn't his best year per se, he's done it for a really long time now in Pittsburgh, very consistent, very healthy, kind of a really balanced pass protect, run blocking, can do a lot of different things. They base a lot of their run game around that counter tray and pulling him. And so I think
he should be on, man.
He to me is kind of what you like in terms of no risk. There's no risk to putting DeCastro on top. Like he's not really, since his rookie year, he hasn't really been a struggling player like at all.
Yeah, man. He hasn't missed more than 2 games since his rookie year. And his rookie year, that was 7-8 years ago, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
He's literally started 15 games every year and then 14 games once. So
right.
Consistent. And like you said, the run game is really like built around him in a lot of ways. And he's very good in pass protection as well. So, I think that's a good one. And Scherf should really be on there. It's just his health. That's the only thing why I wouldn't like really, pound the table too much for him. That's the only thing though, like, strictly on field wise, like I think he should be in the list as well, because he's right there neck and neck with DeCastro in my opinion. So, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I agree. And I love Ryan Jensen too, but it's one of those things that when you're making a list like this, well, Jensen's been in the league, 7 years now, and he's had only 3 as a starter, no bad years as a starter, but this past year was the only one I would say that, like, if he hadn't had this past season, would I have considered him for this list? Probably not. If he does this past season again, I think he's a lock for the list. It's kind of like that balancing a guy who's a little bit older, but not been an elite player their whole career compared to somebody like DeCastro or Scherf. It becomes tough to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, Scherf, Tooney has a case. He's put together a couple really good years.
Yeah.
And I would talk about Pouncey too, man. I think, you want to talk about consistent. I think, Pouncey, as far as just what he's been the last 5 years or so that I've been watching him, he's consistently right there as one of the best guys in the league, at center, in my opinion. So I don't know. I know some people see very different things when they watch him. So I don't know.
You were getting after me before the show. You were like, hey, you working for Pro Football Focus. You didn't have Pouncey on the list at first.
And you're a Steelers guy. And there was no Pouncey even in consideration. That's just
you were getting after me. And I do think this past season was a down year for Pouncey, but I would agree with you in general that he's a really good player and definitely deserving of consideration. I think the hard part for me with offensive linemen, I didn't have Trey Turner in there either for consideration at first. And he's a good player. There's just so many and I just know mathematically in my head, not everybody can make it. And so
I think there's a tier difference there, between Scherf and Tooney and Turner. I think, I'd put Bitonio over Turner and I'd put Zeitler over Turner, in my opinion, but
okay.
I like Turner a lot. He's nice, fun to watch, but pass pro is pretty, it's been up and down the last few years for him. Like, I don't know if you remember that Fletcher Cox game, the color rush game, like where he just put him on skates all night. And
Oh yeah.
and that's not like a anomaly either. I mean, his anchor kind of can be up and down a little bit. So
Right.
I don't know. That's just getting into the nuances of them. But I think Scherf is probably the guy that's the toughest to keep off.
Right. Do we want to lock him in? What do we think?
I mean, it's 3 positions, that we're factoring in here, and we have
That's true.
6-10 guys for 3 positions. I mean,
I say we lock him in.
yeah, I think that's fair.
If we have to cut, if it comes to it and we got to cut him, for whatever reason later we get there and we've got like 125 people, then okay, all right, we got a little Mark Schofield on the show. Mark, can you hear us?
I can. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's going well, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Look, you said you were having a quarterback party, and I had to crash it. So here I am.
I love it.
What's going on, Brandon?
So Mark, what's up, Kirk?
What's going on, Ted?
Hey, what's up, fellas? How we doing today, y'all?
Hey, Kirk.
Good to
Hey,
have
Kirk, what's going on, man?
Oh man, good, man. Just hanging. Glad I could
so much
pop on for a couple minutes.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for taking the time and jumping in on this with us. We're kind of jumping through the position groups right now, and if you can see my screen here on the kind of the spreadsheet, and you see kind of the guys that we've locked in at the different position group. Doesn't mean nobody else will be included. We've kind of locked these guys in at the different position groups right now, and we're kind of building out from there and gonna eventually complete the 100. But can we jump to linebacker? Do you want to be a part of this as we jump through linebacker? Does that sound good?
Yeah, I'm down. Let's roll right through it.
All right. We got linebacker locks for the linebacker position. As you look at this list, or anybody else that you may have in mind that isn't on this list here, we've got Bobby Wagner, Fred Warner, Darius Leonard, Levante David, Eric Kendricks, Demario Davis, Joe Schobert, Deion Jones, and Corey Littleton. Your thoughts, sir?
I think it's a pretty good list. That's the one thing I was looking at. Who else could I add to that list? And I think there's some guys who are going to, I think this season, like take the next step because there will be some open slots, right? There is no more Luke Kuechly, right? Thomas Davis, kind of those guys who I spoke with a guy like Shaq Thompson last week. Could this be the year that he elevates himself into one of the top tier linebacking positions? But I think it starts with Bobby Wagner. He is the best in the game. And I know that the Seahawks drafted a linebacker, but it's still Bobby Wagner's league right now at the linebacking position. Fred Warner is an up-and-comer, right? He had a big monster year last year. I thought an underrated year last year. But people saw what he was able to do in the playoffs. Can he have that kind of leap again? I think this season he'll get more notoriety. The one guy I really feel that no one watched enough was Demario Davis, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he is the guy that you saw his play, but yet it was sort of overshadowed because you never really think of the New Orleans Saints defense, right? We've always talked about their offense, but yet he shined. I mean, how can a guy be an all-pro but yet not be voted to the Pro Bowl? It still baffles me, right? You scratch your head a little bit. But, you want to see some guys in some different spots, right? When I look at Joe Schobert on the list, right, you want to see, is he still going to be the guy, right? He's going to be moving around a little bit. Can he still be your guy? Eric Kendricks, he's just solid, right? It's hard to move some of these guys around because they're just solid, right? You watch them play all year long, and some of them don't have the gaudy numbers, right? The stats, right? Oh, he only had, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, or 1 forced fumble. But if you look at the way that they dictate each and every week the gameplay, just watching them, where there's the plays that don't go down in a stat sheet, those are the ones that really make, for me, the impactfulness of the linebacking spot. That's why it's really so hard to kind of put them in an order.
Right. Yeah, that makes complete sense. So if you looked at this group, and I agree with what you said about Demario Davis completely, because I think even when the Saints signed him, this is on me. Like, I was just like, I don't know about this signing for what they paid for. And last year especially, he was just outstanding. So as you look at this group of linebackers or anybody else that you may have in mind, are those your locks, Bobby Wagner? Are you locking in Fred Warner? Because I'm a huge Fred Warner guy. If you're doing that, I'm pumped.
The only thing is, and this is where I learned a long time ago, man, from Oakland, California, one of my good buddies is Gary Payton, right? The Hall of Fame point guard with the Supersonics for many years. But I remember he would always tell me, because I would throw NBA guys at him. I would say, man, tell me about this guy, man. This guy, he's the next. And he would always say, I don't care about what you did last year or 2 years ago. Can you consistently play at a high level 4, 5, 6 years in a row? And that's where you start to really make a name for yourself. So with Fred, it's honestly really his first season. Now, can you do a repeat? Right? He's on that list, but he's
Right.
more, I think, a notch down on that list
Gotcha.
to where his play can elevate him to, maybe to the top, maybe the top 2, top 3 at that list. So those are the kind of things that I'm looking for this year with a lot of guys because I just know that when I walk into a game, I know what I'm going to get from Bobby Wagner. I mean, it's just not even a question, right? Demario Davis, same thing. I mean, last year, was it a fluke? Was it not? I think Darius Leonard showed us that he had obviously some injuries kind of set him back, but I still saw the same player I saw in his rookie season. Now, year 3, which I always say is the year that you make the biggest jump, that's where I feel like he can be an upper echelon linebacker as well.
So what about Levante David then? He's a guy that's been doing it for a long time at a pretty high level in relative obscurity in Tampa Bay, right?
Yeah, very much so. And so I think now with the microscope being on that team, we'll look a little bit more at him, right? I mean, when you're talking about a team in which Tampa that has been a high-scoring team, you've never really looked at them defensively. Now that Todd Bowles is there, it's a little bit different now, right? And then you add in a Devin White, who last year played pretty well as a rookie, and we want to see where does the Levante David go? He's a little up there now in years, right? You still think of him almost as a young guy, but yet he's an older veteran. And so I do want to see how is he going to be used, right? How is he going to be? Is he just going to be a coverage linebacker? Is he still sideline to sideline? Or is it something now that you kind of hand off, to a Devin White?
Right. Ted, what do you think about the linebacker group as you look at these guys? Who would you lock in after Bobby Wagner?
After Wagner, Demario Davis for sure. But you're right. I think there's a lot of open spots for the top 5 list now. I like Darius Leonard a lot too. And I feel like Deion Jones should be in that list, but I haven't really watched a lot of Jones last year, so I don't know if he dropped off or anything. But he's been so good for a few years now. I think he's on that list. I think Corey Littleton's an interesting player too because if you look at his stat sheet, he fills up the stat sheet on every category. But last year, I felt like his numbers were a little inflated. There were some up and down things. The year before that, but last year I thought he made some really big improvements, and he had the numbers too. But he doesn't have a lot of years of just high production. Some of these guys have.
Right. Kirk, if you were going to throw a second guy in there, who would be like in that after Bobby Wagner? Who would you say is in consideration for that number 2 spot?
Well, it's a little bit different here because I would say obviously Wagner, and then I would have to look at Eric Kendricks, right? Just a solid player. And where do we put Anthony Barr on there as well? You know what I mean? Like he's another solid player who I think is an upper echelon guy. I mean, when I'm in Orlando, he's at the Pro Bowl every year. So that makes for me to say that people understand his type of play. But are we talking about off the ball or on the ball guys? And that's the hard part. You know what I mean? Because when you really think about it, it's like, oh, he's an outside linebacker or he's an outside 4-3 guy. But what do we call those guys who are not primarily, but play all 3 downs or are the nickel players, nickel linebackers when there's only 2 linebackers on the field, right? I don't call them an outside guy. I just call them a linebacker. And so how do we rate them? Is it, like I said, that's the hard part. Is it tackles? Is it tackles for loss? Is it sacks? Is it impact plays? Like, how do we rate those guys? And that's the hard part is that, some guys can have a big year by having a lot of interceptions. I remember I had an interception great season, but, statistically people are like, nah, we want to see more impactful plays. I'm like, well, that's it. But you want to see the consistency behind that. And so I think when you look at Kendricks and Barr, those 2 guys, are just 2 of the greats right now in the league. And so I would think you would have to put Anthony Barr on that list as well. I think I'm more biased on this one, fellas, and I'm sorry about that. But I feel like I just have to be biased because I've seen these guys for 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row, right? I've seen these guys make it through the first contract and be rewarded on the second deal. And that's really where I want to see, where does your game go? Because some guys, they get They get the rookie contract, they're there. And then when they get the second contract, do you elevate or you stay the same? And I've seen Bobby Wagner, who's gone through 2 deals already, but the Eric Kendricks, I throw Anthony Barr on there. And now we want to see what that next part is, right? Levante David can make some noise. You mentioned again this year. Deion Jones, I think he can make some huge strides this year. Devin White, and obviously we'll see with Kenneth Murray, the couple of rookie linebackers, Isaiah Simmons, how he'll be used. But for the most part, this is I think a small sample size list of guys who I know every Sunday what I'm going to get.
Right. You're right, because we don't right now at the linebacker position in the NFL, especially with like Luke Kuechly retiring and some other guys too stepping away from the game, and some guys that have just kind of gotten older. We don't have like established stars at linebacker right now, hardly in the NFL. I mean, you think about the guys that do it every year. Even Kendricks is still pretty young, but Kendricks and Wagner do top that list probably. But Fred Warner, Darius Leonard, we're still kind of getting to know these guys. They look like budding stars. Even the Roquan Smiths, the Tremaine Edmonds. Like I think these guys have tons of potential.
Yeah. And that's the hard part. It's like because when we really start to expand the list, I almost feel like it's our veteran guys and then our young guys who are on the bubble of becoming the next best, right? Because Leighton Vander Esch has an injury-laden season last year, and it's like, okay, is he going to be what we saw in year 1, or is it the injury-riddled year 2, right? And where's Jalen Smith on the list, right? Because he's starting to expand a little bit. He's got the second contract already, but have we seen more of those impact plays, or was he just rewarded for being a second-round pick back when Dallas drafted him when he should have been a first-round pick? So that's what I'm saying. I think that this thing is going to be wide open outside of the Bobby Wagner, Eric Kendricks. I'll throw in for sure Anthony Barr, maybe Levante David. But outside of that, that's where that pecking order will start when it comes to the linebackers.
Right. No, it's an interesting thought because I do think the league there's so many good young linebackers and there are talented young linebackers in the league, but we haven't seen anything established in terms of established consistency. I know you got to run here soon, but before you leave, Kirk, could you give us a name of a linebacker around the league that maybe not a lot of people are talking about, or he's not on this list, and he probably won't be a top 100 player this year, but you just feel kind of bullish is going to be in this conversation? It could be a top tier guy who was drafted high, could be a guy who was a late pick who just started playing, like an Alexander Johnson in Denver or something like that. But a guy that you've seen that you're like, this guy, I just believe it. I know he's not going to be, on the top 100 list this year, but we do next year or the year after, like this guy's going to be in there.
Wow, that's a good question. I think there's a couple guys. I'm really interested to see how these rookies play in terms of like the Isaiah Simmons, but also Kenneth Murray. I really want to see how does he play the game, man. The Chargers traded up to get him. He goes into a great situation, an outstanding defensive line that they have with the Chargers. That he can just be a guy who can just get downhill and play well. I think a guy that a lot of us may be familiar with, and he really wasn't supposed to be kind of in the plans, but it just happened. But I think Dre Greenlaw with the San Francisco 49ers is a guy that could be the tandem that – and see, I've always liked to watch linebackers work in tandem, right? Whether it was Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, whether it was Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs, whether obviously I mentioned Kendricks and Barr, Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly. Like it feels like when you have two guys that work well together, it brings out the best in them. And so for me, I really feel like, honestly, I think Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner could be that duo this season. So I think he's going to be the guy that I look at this season. And I think if there's one more guy I would try to definitely take a look at, I do want to see more on Corey Littleton, right? I mean, he's on our list, but I want to see him where he's now primarily the guy. Like he will be the guy on that defense. And so I want to see, will he have a breakout year?
Right. That's great stuff, Kirk. Thanks so much for joining and for giving some insight to us on that position, because it's a tough one if you're not scouting all the time. There's a lot that goes into it. And so great to get your insight on that, and everything. Appreciate you stopping by and giving us a little bit of your time too.
Oh, no problem, fellas. Appreciate it. Any more questions before I get out of here? I saw we got a couple.
I got one.
Brandon?
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on CJ Mosley, because I know, he got hurt last year, obviously.
Correct.
In the game that he played, I think he played 1 or 2, maybe 3 games. I mean, he looked great, and he was really good before that. Obviously, is that a guy that you could see bouncing back? And did you view him before the injury as one of the top tier inside linebackers, or how do you feel about a guy like that?
Well, I've loved watching him because he played with my mentor and Don Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens. So I've always watched CJ, but it was about, okay, when he left Baltimore, what was it going to look like in New York? And obviously it was a bit different, right? And then the injury thing is always what hurts players, right? Because if you're injured, it's kind of like, where do we place you at? Where do we put you at? And I think for us too, what really puts you on I think the higher echelon is playing in the playoffs. Let's be honest, because we remember what you do in the playoffs, not necessarily what you do in the regular season a lot of times, right? And that's where he has to take his game to the next level, right? I know he's a good player, but I want to see him now take his game to the next level with New York and really be one of the best linebackers that I saw him for many years, or his early part of his career with the Baltimore Ravens, which also brings me back to another guy, Patrick Queen, who's going to take who they've drafted out of LSU to replace hopefully CJ Mosley. I know Mosley's been gone for a little bit, but still they're trying to get that kind of player back. So that's why I'm intrigued by the young linebackers and these guys who are still fairly young in their careers and where do they move. So definitely, I know this season I'm definitely going to be doing more breakdowns and just watching the tape of the linebackers and how they're progressing, especially the guys who are in the same system for another year.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, do you have time for one more? I got.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So have you watched a lot of tape of Rashaan Evans?
I did. I watched a little
bit. What do you
bit
think about him? Because I love the way he plays, man. I mean, talk about dictating a defense. I mean, I love the way he plays. So what are your?
But that's the hard
Still early
part
on.
again, though, right? The hard part is that how do defenses look when he's out there and when they're not out there, right? Again, same thing with the injury again, right? He was a guy that when he's out there, you're like, wow, okay, he's a difference maker, right? And he fits what Mike Vrabel and that defense, what they're asking, right? Get downhill, make plays, play off their defensive line, turn things back. And you saw him be a guy who just penetrates. But like I said, again, I wanted to see him more in the playoff setting, right? Because it's hard to watch the AFC South throughout the season sometimes. It's like, oh, who's playing? Oh, it's Tennessee and Jacksonville. Yeah, I'll tape that one. I'm not watching that one live. But I think that you saw parts throughout the season where, you can see that I think that he's going to be a guy that will continue to get better. He just has to start doing it, I think, in the prime time moments, which I always felt that's, as a linebacker, that's what we always remember most. Right? I've learned that throughout my career and us as analysts. I really feel like we see what you do in the prime time moments more so than we see you on a week-to-week basis.
Gotcha. Cool. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem, fellas.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kirk, so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us, man. That was great insight.
I'll be looking for the final list, fellas, so hurry up and get it done.
We will. We'll post it up on social so you see it.
All right, sound good, guys. Appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Thanks, Kirk. Kirk Morrison, ladies and gentlemen, former NFL linebacker and current Rams analyst, ESPN analyst, does a ton of great work. Make sure you're giving him a follow on Twitter as well. We got two guests that joined us at the same time. It was like an influx of great talent and evaluation ability. Mark Schofield.
Really? You're putting me in that category, John? With Kirk, an actual NFL linebacker, you're going from an actual NFL linebacker to a washed-up D3 quarterback? You can't put those two guys on the same level.
I don't know if you're washed up, man.
I'm washed up, man. I am washed, believe me.
Is Mark's mic loud for anybody, or is it just me?
I can turn it down a bit.
A little.
Is that better?
Is it a little loud? Okay, yeah, it was for me. I wasn't sure if it was for everybody, if it was just my...
It was probably my kid. He had his little Zoom class this morning. He was playing around with a microphone. These are good times, my friend.
Mark, we got to get like a training montage of you while we're quarantined, throwing the ball again.
Oh, do we need that? Seth Galita's got a little training montage of him throwing. We could put that on the timeline. That's going to be good for everybody.
All right, Mark. So we're talking quarterbacks here. We're trying to narrow down the list of top 100 players in the NFL, and we haven't jumped into quarterbacks yet because we were waiting. your presence and your insight. So thank you for waiting patiently with us there as we discuss some linebackers. But right now we've got a tough task ahead of us, and we'll start with you. And if you were locking in quarterbacks that you know that you cannot build a top 100 players list in the NFL without these guys, who would your quarterbacks be?
I mean, I think sort of working from your list, you got like say the top 6 or so: Mahomes, Wilson, Lamar, Deshaun, Breeze, and Brady. I think you've got to start with those guys. I think it's hard to put together a top 100 list of quarterbacks in the league. And I know Kirk was just saying, with some guys you want to see some level of consistency, and so you might say Deshaun, Lamar, Mahomes. They haven't done it for 3, 4, 5 years in a row. I think we could be fairly confident that they will. I think looking at, especially with Mahomes and Lamar, their ability the past couple of years, you're talking about the past 2 MVPs, like these are guys that are going to be doing it at a consistent level. We think that the talent level is there, that they'll be able to do that. So I'm comfortable with those guys. Watson, look, I've still got a soft spot for Deshaun Watson, dating back to his draft cycle, and I'm going to die on that hill. And maybe Bill O'Brien isn't doing enough to help him, although I think that offense might be a little better than we're expecting. I still think Deshaun Watson is a tremendous talent at the quarterback position. The next tier of names, I think, are where it gets interesting. I think you look at, we know Drew Brees and Tom Brady. Yeah, they're in. Stafford and Roethlisberger, they're talented enough to be on that list, but they're both got health concerns. I mean, Stafford's got 2 years in a row now with back injuries. Roethlisberger coming off, the elbow injury. I think talent-wise, both of those guys probably belong. But if you're wary about the health concerns there, maybe there are guys that might be sort of on the bubble here. Rodgers probably gets in, again, from a talent perspective, but he's not the Aaron Rodgers of old. We've seen decline in play from him. I still think you build a top 100 list, you put him in there. But they seem to be moving to a different kind of offense, to more 49ers type offense. We saw Matt LaFleur's comments when they drafted Josh DeGuara, for example. They want to have him be their Kyle Juszczyk. So they're moving towards that 21-12 personnel, play action heavy offense. So it's going to be a bit different. I think Ryan gets in. He had a down year last year, lowest ANY since I think 2013. But I still think he's talented enough to make a list like this in the top 100. Wentz, similar health concerns. You guys know I love that guy, but he's had an injury history. It's partly because of his style of play. I mean, Ben Solak, who we all know, wrote a great piece last year about his duality of play and how he puts himself on the line. And he got injured against the Rams in 2017, diving for a touchdown. Like, he's going to be susceptible to injuries. I think, again, talent-wise, he can get in. Health-wise is a concern. I think Dak is in. And I know the debate right now is whether to pay Dak or not. I think Dak gets into a list like this. I think you pay that guy his money. I'm fine with that. The next 5 guys, I think it's easier to make a case that they shouldn't be on. Jared Goff, I'm not ready to put him on a list like this. He had some strides, certainly under Sean McVay, but I'm not seeing consistency from him. I'm not seeing him raise the level of play and the guys around him. I think it's a lot on the scheme more than anything else. Tannehill had a great year last year, sure. But are we going all in on him after 1 year of play? It's hard to do that. Garoppolo is good. He runs that offense extremely well. And if you want to make a case for him, look, under pressure last year, he had the 4th best adjusted completion percentage of PFF, like under pressure. So if you want to make a case for Garoppolo, you can start there. I still think similar to Goff, it's a lot of scheme assistance than anything else. I'm not seeing him sort of raise the level of playing people around him. Cousins is the same kind of argument. Kevin Stefanski's offense was very helpful for him. A lot of boot action, play action. I'm not ready to put him on a list like this. And Baker, look, man, the guy was awful from clean pockets last year. Just run through the numbers. He had 16 picks from a clean pocket, most in the league. So it's tough to put him in. Guys that weren't on this list that we could at least throw out there: Derek Carr, Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton. I know he's waiting for a spot, but still a talented guy. I don't think any of them would get locked, but I want to at least drop their names. And if you're looking for an up-and-comer, Kyler Murray is going to make this list sooner than we think. He might make it at the end of next year, when you look at what they're putting together around him. And I'm so excited to watch him this year. But I think, going from top to bottom, those are the guys that I would have locked in.
Yeah. Now, I included a lot of quarterbacks on this list without the intention of including a lot of them in the list. To me, I really, I don't, as much as I love Baker, I don't think you can.
No, you can't.
And Philip Rivers, even like it's falling off now at this point, I think, to things en route. I'm not ready to go there with Tannehill after you're not even a full season, although I know he played well. To me, it's premature. Same sort of Cousins and Goff. I feel like they're good players, and Cousins definitely was much better last year and was a good player last year. But is he a top 100 guy across the league? I don't know. That's where I struggle with. So, and I love Garoppolo too. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go there. This past season was his first full season really being a starter. So I'm just really not ready to go there with him yet, although I'm a fan of his. Ted, do you disagree with anything that Mark and I kind of said about quarterbacks that we're eliminating and quarterbacks that we're considering there for the top 100?
No, I think maybe. I agree with everything.
Nice.
I think Matt Ryan is constantly underrated. He plays with Atlanta team that really hasn't been good for the last few years. I feel like he's constantly underrated. I think Dak Prescott played at a really, really high level last year and would deserve to be on this list. Garoppolo is kind of on that edge, but he has taken over games at times, but he just hasn't done it consistently. I think, just not playing very well in the Super Bowl left a sour taste in everybody's mouths. I could see him maybe making a jump this year, being his, last year was his first full season as a starter, and obviously it's been a great situation.
Right. Brandon, your thoughts on the quarterback group as we've kind of talked about him in terms of who's in and who isn't. I know Mark put Dak in. He said he's a lock. You love Wentz, and that conversation has gone back and forth. I actually think that Wentz and Dak will be the two most hotly debated players for this list and for the rank over each other. Like if one's out and one's in, we're gonna have people coming for our necks from some fan base, and so we've got a big decision on our hands today, ladies and gentlemen. But as you consider that list, Brandon, what are your thoughts on the group as we've kind of described it?
I think after Prescott, those other names could probably just be taken off. And I think that's kind of like where I kind of draw the line of guys, who we're talking about to get into the top 100. That's just me. And then, I pretty much agree with everything Mark said. I defer to him, really on quarterbacks. I see these guys on film, but I don't look at the numbers or anything, very closely and compare. So I can't really, get on that level. But I do think that it's really interesting that Aaron Rodgers isn't on the list. I know that there's been a drop off. I guess I have just a kind of a cool hypothetical to Mark that I'm curious about. So just for 2020 only, and I know this isn't necessarily how we're grading these guys for inclusion on the list, but between Rodgers and Prescott, Mark, if you had a choice of one of those guys for 2020, only, and you could put them in the same system, or all things were equal with each of them, who would you take in that scenario? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question, Brandon. I think, to try to put them in the same sort of system, I think all things equal, I'm going to bet on Aaron Rodgers, particularly going into 2020, because let's face it, that team just drafted Jordan Love. That has put sort of a fire under Aaron Rodgers. And so I've anticipated we're going to come out and Aaron Rodgers is going to try to prove everybody wrong. I've seen it with Tom Brady. I've seen it with other quarterbacks. Those guys that have that ability to get to a different headspace. We just all watched The Last Dance, right? And so we saw Michael Jordan find ways, invent ways to motivate himself. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is going to do something similar. I think, though, if you sort of put them in their current environments, right, with Dak in Dallas and with what we see Matt LaFleur building in Green Bay, Dak is in such a great situation for 2020 because you look at, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, right, Ezekiel Elliott, those are the top 4 skill guys around him. Blake Jarwin, a tight end, might be a question mark, but he's going to be option 5 or maybe 6 if you think about Tony Pollard coming in for Zeke. So he's got so many weapons to work with, and then you look at what is happening in Green Bay. They seem to be moving to that 12-21 personnel type offense like we see in San Francisco. They're building it to be more of an offense that's going to be sort of ball control, play action heavy. So I think Dak in 2020 is in a better situation, but in a vacuum, I think you can make the case for Aaron Rodgers, given he's going to want to prove everybody wrong. I think that's kind of where he's going to be coming from this year.
That's the thing, John.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Just your thoughts real quick. So like, on these players, how we're including them, are we doing it in a vacuum or are we doing it on who we think is going to have a better season? Like, is that defined? Do we know? Did I miss that?
To me, I think it's both those things are under consideration. I don't know that either excludes the other necessarily, but I do think that it's a kind of like who's going to play best. If like somebody was on here and they were on like, either of the teams Josh Rosen's been on the last 2 seasons,
Right.
and we were like, okay, how do we want to rank them? I think we, if it was Matt Stafford on those teams, I think we would still be like, okay, well, Matt Stafford's been pretty good throughout his career and really hasn't fallen off, and so to me, that would put him in consideration. I just think when I look at this group of quarterbacks that we don't have necessarily locked in right now, I know, Mark, you said Dak's locked in for you. I think everybody agrees on the 6 quarterbacks that are up on the list already that they're locked in. The discussion kind of will center around these next 6. Then to me, I don't think there's any question that Dak Prescott was the best of those guys last year. I know Stafford and Roethlisberger got hurt, but I don't think there's any question Dak was better than Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, and Aaron Rodgers last year, right? Like, is that a controversial take?
No, I mean, it might be in some sort of quarters of the world, but it shouldn't be. I mean, I think Dak had elite film, elite numbers to back it up. I mean, I wrote a piece over Pro Football Weekly, like mid-season, that Dak was under consideration for MVP at that time.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at that now, there, Stafford was hurt, Roethlisberger was hurt, so, they have issues there. Ryan had to step back. Wentz, to his credit, got a bunch of, guys that were camp cuts and things like that to the playoffs. I mean, because Jeffrey was out, Deshaun Jackson was out, he was throwing like Greg Ward and others. He did a great job to get that team into the playoffs and deserves credit for it. But I think Dak's body of work was on the whole better than Wentz last year.
Right. So let me throw this to you then, Brandon, because I know you've got thoughts on this too, but I guess as you're talking about context of situation, it's important to consider. And Ted, feel free to chime in on this too, but is Dak's situation, because it's good and he happens to also play very well within that situation, should he be docked for his situation if he's not dragging the situation down, but instead, at least, you may not say he's elevating the talent around him, may not be the way you choose to phrase it, but I mean, last year he thrived with a good offense, and I think that, I don't know that he should be knocked for that. Am I right?
Yeah, I think 100%. I don't think we should knock him. I just think looking at players in a vacuum is helpful. And that's why I posed that question to Mark, just because it kind of helps contextualize how we feel about these guys a little bit in the vacuum. And I think that's important because Dak is in a situation right now that none of these other guys have in terms of, he's just an absolutely loaded offense. And I don't think that should hurt him at all. But in a vacuum, I still kind of lean towards Rodgers, along with Mark. So that's why that one is so interesting. I think those are probably the next 2 because of Wentz's injury history and Stafford's injury history. That's why I would probably put Rodgers and Prescott as the next 2. But to answer your question, no, I don't think it should, hurt him at all. Right. But those 2 names are interesting.
Right.
Yeah. I think what Prescott has for him too is he never really played bad in the league. As a rookie, he's played at a pretty consistent level throughout his career, and then all of a sudden he has a big monster year last year and a better situation coming into 2020. So it's hard to leave him off this list. But I do think that we should lock Rodgers in this list, even though he isn't the Rodgers that we knew from a few years ago. But he is going to be in his second year in this system where he's shown that he can be extremely effective, but he does have to play more in the rhythm of this offense. And like we talked about, this year is going to be a prove-it year for him. He has a lot to prove, and he has that sort of mentality where he's going to try to just rip everybody for, doubting him. So, and he's been, he's an all-time great too. So I think he has to be on this list.
Yeah. I agree with Ted, and it sounds like Brandon does. Mark, would you agree with that out of these 5 that are remaining here, Rodgers should be the next one kind of locked in?
Yeah, I think so. Again, because you look at the body of work, and you look at, Ted just made a great point about his second year sort of in LaFleur's system. I think you're going to see some growth as a result of that. And I think, it's hard to overstate what Aaron Rodgers has done as a quarterback. I mean, I often, pose this question to people like, if you have a quarterback, if you need a guy to make one throw, like, who are the 5 guys you're going to ask? Who are the 5 guys that will be on your list? And it's hard to get to 5 quarterbacks before you'd ask Aaron Rodgers to make one throw for you. And so I think you keep that in mind as well. So, yeah, out of that next group of 5, I think Rodgers is probably the next one in.
All right, so we got Dak and Rodgers both in. So Dak is in. Carson Wentz is not in right now. Out of these,
Good luck with that one.
and Mark,
Eagle
don't
fans
leave
are
the
gonna
show
kill
just
us.
yet.
No, I got to go, guys.
Don't leave us just yet here. Out of these next 4, Mark, who would you lock in next?
The next 4 being Stafford, Roethlisberger, Ryan, and Wentz.
You got it.
That's tough. I mean, my heart is telling me Wentz, just because, look, I mean, that's my guy. I got a signed Carson Wentz card from North Dakota State over the shoulder here. But I think my head's telling me Ryan. I know he had the down year last year, but you're talking a guy that's a couple years removed from an MVP season where he was like lights out. He was posted numbers that in a pre-Mahomes era are now like kind of Mahomes-esque. I think when you sort of watch him play, he has a lot of the things we look for at the quarterback position, from the accuracy to the processing speed to all that stuff. He's been doing it for a long time here. He doesn't have the injury concerns that the other 3 guys have. Stafford coming off the 2 back injuries, Ben coming off the elbow injury. Once we talked about his injury history. So I'm the most comfortable slotting Ryan in over the other 3.
Okay. What do you think, Ted?
Yeah, I think you're kind of the question with Ryan Wentz is consistency over upside, right? I mean, we all know Carson Wentz has huge upside. We've seen him have a monster year that year before he got injured right before the playoffs. But last year, obviously, his situation was just tough. And, we saw some of his problems with just trying to make too many big plays as well. God, it's hard because, like, do you want to go for the upside or do you want to go for a guy that's just been rock solid, consistent his whole career?
Am I the only guy that would consider Stafford here too?
I think that's a good one.
Yeah,
Stafford was playing awesome before he
Yeah.
got last year.
it's true.
Yeah, he was. I mean, look, it's hard to leave Stafford off. I mean,
He put all 4 of them in and just
yeah, I mean that's the easy way. I mean, but then you gotta face some tough decisions at other positions. Like you said, John, Stafford was playing at a really high level at the start of last year. I mean, before the injury that cropped up again. I still think when healthy, he's one of the most talented quarterbacks there is in the league. And I think he certainly took a step forward after Calvin Johnson because it forced him to be more of a quarterback. So yeah, I mean, if you want to make a case for Stafford as the next guy in, I can certainly see it.
I
How
think
about
Considering
go ahead, Ted?
if we're considering positional value in this thing, we should have a lot of quarterbacks, right?
I mean, you should have 32. I mean, let's be honest.
Hey, Dano would be happy. He would like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me think about it this way. If a positional value, I mean, I don't think you can totally rule it out, but at the same time, we try to, other than cutting fullbacks and specialists out, rip fullbacks. I know Brandon's still mad at me for that, but we kind of cut those guys out just because not on the field enough to be comparable with these guys, even if they're great at their position. So we can consider it, I guess, a little bit. But let me ask you this, Mark: is Ben Roethlisberger? Are we just kind of ruling him out because he was hurt all last season, for the most part last season, or is it like you've seen a clear drop off that would put him below these 3 at least?
I don't know if there's been a clear drop off. It's more the injury than anything else. I think there are still times when Ben Roethlisberger shows you that he can do things that some other quarterbacks can't do. I mean, I know it's a different game now, but his ability to sort of hang tough in a pocket, fight in chaos, handle it when the pocket breaks down, make throws with guys draped off of him. I mean, there are a few that can do it like he can, at least that part of the game. My hesitancy is more the injury at this point in his career. I mean, we're talking about an elbow nerve type injury at this point in his career. It might be tough to come back from. I mean, we're expected to see Roethlisberger back and healthy and ready to go. And certainly what we're seeing, like the clips on social media and stuff, it seems like he's throwing it again. Juju's talking about he's back. And I hope to see it because I like watching him play. That's the hesitancy there. I haven't seen like drop off or slippage or anything like that. Certainly like we didn't saw from Ryan last year where you did see some drop off in the play on the field. But it's more the injury in the elbow than anything else.
Right. Yeah. This is a tough decision. I don't know. Are we ready to lock in someone else here? Does anybody feel strongly enough to say I want to lock in this guy, or do we want to move on and come back to quarterback when we get to cut down time?
What do you think, Mark? I mean, I say we move on, but it's your.
I
call.
mean,
Your intent.
you know, I want to defer to you guys because I don't want to make the hard decision to leave Wentz on or off. I co-host an Eagles podcast with Kiss, guys. I can't go back. Let me just make a case for Wentz on the upside, even though I was just talking about Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, you are talking about a guy that maybe you just see 3 or 4 more years of Carson Wentz, but he's somebody that plays this position to the whistle. You know, we talk about quarterback being sort of a huddle to whistle position. Not a lot of guys do it the way Wentz does. Not a lot of guys are sort of willing to put, themselves on the line. And we talk about competitive toughness. It matters at the quarterback position. And Wentz is a guy that has shown his teammates time and time again the willingness to put his body on the line to win games. And I think that does count for something. And so that's my little elevator pitch to let you guys, decide on Carson Wentz or not. And so I can at least show my face to Kist again next time we record.
We'll tell Kiss that you fought hard for his boy.
Yeah, please do, because he knows where I live now, and I got to be able to sleep soundly at night if I can.
That's a legitimate concern.
It is. It is.
Mark, thanks so much for the insight, man. This was awesome. Appreciate you waiting and appreciate you giving your insight.
Always, guys. Have a blast. This is awesome. Can't wait to see the results.
Absolutely. Thanks.
See you, Mark.
See you guys.
Hopefully we'll get Eric Crocker in here soon. I'm still trying to get a hold of him, and his mechanic was working on his car, and he was texting me at the outset, and now I haven't heard from him. So hopefully we'll get him in there too to give some of his thoughts. But okay, so we come back to quarterback. That was good discussion, but difficult discussion. Do we want it? Let's try and knock out running back. Are we feeling up to knocking out running back here?
Yeah.
Okay, running backs that are locks. Ted, you kick us off here. Running backs that you feel like are locks.
CMC, Barkley, Elliott, and yeah, I think after those we have a debate about it. Pretty much everybody on the list.
Yeah, I agree definitely with C-Mac and Barkley. Think they're locks. I know Barkley banged up last year, but yeah, what he can do, it's still too special to ignore for a list like this. I mean, I'll kind of throw Nick Chubb in there as a guy that I don't know that we could.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd have a ton of running backs on this list, but I'm not sure like we could do it without Chubb the way he's played and where he's even come along as a receiver a little bit. And
He should be on.
And we almost have to include Derrick Henry too, because I mean, just the way he ran last year in playoffs.
But
oh, really?
yeah,
I would too.
I mean, Kamara and Cook.
I agree, but it's just like, if we consider like the impact he made last year, especially in the playoffs, right. It's hard to. And late last year, not just in the playoffs too. It's hard to put him off that list. But I do think that skill wise, there are guys better than him.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I look at too, is the skill part. Like, are there and impact in the passing game? All of these guys impact the passing game, except Henry. Like he's not really impactful in the passing game. I mean, outside of some screens and stuff like that, that's not really, he doesn't contribute there. And to me, that's a lot of value that this position brings, is what you do in the passing game. And I'm just not sure I see that from him. So that's why I would really lean Kamara and Cook over him. And I personally wouldn't be jumping the gun to put Henry in the top 100, but I could be alone on that.
Yeah, let's lock Kamara in. I think Kamara goes in there. Cook, his health is questionable to me.
Yeah, I mean, when he's healthy, I think he's up there with the best backs in the league.
Yeah, I'm so biased on Cook. He's my favorite back in the league, but I love like running the ball purely. I think he's probably like maybe the best runner in the league. I mean, him and Chubb stand out to me, but all around skill sets, that's where other guys come in. But I don't know. I love Cook, but health is a concern. So
yeah.
And skill-wise, Mixon could be one of the best in the league too, but he just plays behind such a bad offensive line that it's really tough to see him showcase his talents the way he should.
I know Joshua Jacobs was great last year, but am I jumping the gun a little bit with him being in here? Or do we feel like I think he could be a real stud? We may be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I know he's not going to be in the top 100, but
maybe
he's going to.
I thought he was a top 5 running back last year. He was that good. I mean, I think he broke the most tackles last year of any back, and he was playing with a fractured shoulder since early in the season too. The only thing is, I wish they feature in the pass game more, because we saw in Alabama he could do it, and in training camp he was catching like bombs in
Mhm.
training camp, and then all of a sudden the season starts, they don't throw him any passes at all.
This-
But
Yeah.
yeah,
This might be my most controversial take of the show, but I honestly might take all these backs over Derrick Henry. Not that he isn't good. I think it is, but I just think, like you mentioned, Ted, Joe Mixon, talent-wise, he plays behind one of the worst offensive line, maybe the worst in football, and he has for years, really his whole career. And I know he's not necessarily the same consistency and vision as Derrick Henry, but talent-wise, in terms of making people miss, breaking tackles, catching the football, I just think that I'd prefer him over Henry. And I'm not saying he's necessarily like, if you needed a guy to get 5 yards for you in the next play, like you wouldn't give it to Henry. But I just think what Mixon brings to the table is really valuable. And, Jacobs, he has to prove it in the passing game too. But what I saw last year from Josh Jacobs, like, oh man, like, I mean, I think he can be an absolute monster. And, Aaron Jones has proven it in the passing game, especially this past season. He can make an impact there. And I think he finally kind of came into his own. And you could certainly say injuries before that kind of maybe leave him out of this conversation. But to me, I don't know, that's my probably super controversial take on it that I would get shredded on Twitter for that.
Yeah,
I think
not
I take
here, but maybe
9 other
Twitter.
backs.
Yeah.
What's that?
Not here, but maybe Twitter. Yeah.
yeah.
I think Cook is the next guy, and then Jones. Those would be my two, but that's just based on who I've seen.
Do we feel
Yeah.
confident enough to lock Cook, or do we want to come back because of the injuries in the past?
I guess what you guys think. I aside from injuries, I mean, are injuries enough to keep him off for you guys? I guess I don't know. I mean,
Well, Cook's only had that one last year is his only real year as a consistent impact player, right?
yeah,
Right. Yeah. You have
that's true.
a 11 game season in 2018 and a 4 game season in 2017, both of which were great numbers wise. In 2018, in 11 games, he caught.
Hey guys, I got to
passes.
bounce real quick, but I'll be back in like 15.
All right. Sounds
Okay.
good. Thanks,
All
Brandon.
right, guys.
But yeah, I think that Ted this past season, 14 games. I mean, he didn't even play a complete season this past year, but 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns and 53 catches. The impact in the passing game is hard to overlook for sure. But I kind of agree with you. Let's come back to it. I think he's one of the best running backs in the league when he's healthy, but I do think that matters. He's not even, he's played 29 career games in 3 seasons. It's a little bit scary. You know what I mean? And I think we need to consider health. Otherwise, how are we ever going to cut this thing down?
Exactly.
Okay. Let's jump to these wide receivers really quick, because this is going to be a monstrosity to kind of bite off these wide receivers. And let's also check real quick, how many players do we have on the top 100 currently? I know we got to revisit linebacker maybe and finish that one up too, but right now we've got 45 guys on there. So it's in wide receiver and in defensive end, or an edge rusher are going to be, a big chunk of this. Exactly. So, okay. So we've got wide receivers that are locks that you cannot have a top 100 without. To me, I mean, the top couple guys on this list are all like Julio Jones, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Odell, Amari, Diggs, right? Those guys are locks, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just move all these guys up, because I just don't know. I don't know how you could have a top 100 without those guys.
I think maybe Amari Cooper would be the only one where somebody could make an argument because of the drops and sometimes disappearing, but it's just so dominant, especially when he got the Cowboys. It's hard to put him off.
Right. I mean, you've seen Cooper up close for years, and you kind of know everything that comes to the table with his game. And, to me, I think, okay, I did not think when the Cowboys traded for him, I was on the record as saying, like, this was too risky of a move for me. I wouldn't have made it, first round pick for a guy with the drop issues that he had. And even though I loved him coming out, and I thought he was, still a good player when healthy and everything, at the same time, I was like, okay, you're trading a first round pick for a guy with consistency issues, drop issues. And I know there were issues in the offense and everything too, but it just felt like too big of a risk to me. Obviously it's panned out okay. I know people write about his home and away splits, and it is pretty interesting that he has such significant home and away splits in terms of his production. there's definitely some level of like psychological stuff with Amari Cooper's game.
He's such a weird wide receiver. Like
Yeah.
there's just like really odd parts about his game. That's why I can see people making an argument against him. It's just he's not quite that bona fide number one,
Yeah.
but he flashes. He flashes, and when he flashes, they're big flashes too. So
And I think a lot of people would put him over Stephon Diggs, but Arif Hassan asked me one time, he was kind of like, well, what makes Cooper better than Diggs? And I was like, I don't know. Honestly, like he might not be better than him.
I think he's a little bigger and maybe just a little more athletic than Diggs, whereas Diggs is more just, best route runner in the league.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, he's attention to detail. And Diggs, what's amazing about Diggs is that almost no one thinks of him as a contested catch receiver, but Pro Football Focus has him like as one of the best contested catch receivers every year, usually. Like, I mean, ridiculous percentages on 20 some type of contested catch targets. He's catching like 60 some percent of those and, leading the league. And not a lot of people think of that. So I watched some Diggs tape in preparation for this. And I was kind of like, I mean, he was making catches. Guys just destroy him at the catch point and he holds onto the ball. Like he has really good hands where Cooper's hands have been suspect, but Cooper achieves so much separation on a consistent basis that I don't feel like we see him in contested catch situations very often. Right.
Yeah. I mean, he's not as good of a route runner as Diggs, I don't think, but I think he's just that much better of an athlete than Diggs.
Right.
And not that Diggs is a poor athlete, but Cooper's just a really good athlete too.
Right.
I think Allen Robinson has to be on this list to me.
I'd agree with that completely. Yeah. To me, he's almost, I think maybe the next guy out of all the receivers left in the league that I would put in that list. And I would stand on the table then at this point, I think a couple names jump out, but to me, I don't know that we could leave Tyler Lockett out with the last couple seasons he's had, especially last year. I mean, he was just dynamic. I mean, the guy is just so good. I don't know that I could leave him out. So he would be the next guy for me. I don't know what you think about his game. And I know Keenan Allen and Cortland Sutton are kind of T.Y. Hilton's been doing it for a while. And then you have the young crew, these second-year guys. I don't know if we even want to go there, if we can even go there, if we have space in the top 100 for guys who, you talk about guys needing to prove it at other positions, but Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, like, I don't know, are we ready to even go there with those guys at this point? So it gets tough at this point.
Yeah, I think it's way too tough for the second-year wide receivers at this point.
Right. Can't lock them in for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, probably A.J. Brown would probably be the closest to me, even over Metcalf. I think A.J. Brown would be the closest.
I think that's fair. He was more consistent than Metcalf last year. I think Metcalf had the drops earlier in the year, and his route tree kind of evolved as the year went on. I feel like Brown was pretty much a beast until the playoffs game. Then he was kind of quiet, but McLaurin was also, it could be considered. And I thought Deebo's second half of the season was better than all of them. So in the playoffs, and I just thought Deebo was, I mean, we take into account what he can do as a runner too. I mean, on end arounds, and the guy just has crazy vision and burst. He could be a running back. I think he could be a top 10 running back in the league.
Oh yeah. I mean, they drew up tons of plays just to hand him off the ball.
Right.
Kenny Galladay is an interesting name too. He's really good.
He is. I mean, I almost had a hard time leaving him off the list when I was doing this kind of preliminary running it through, and just kind of, I was just like, man, I don't know. Kenny Galladay, every game I watched him this past season, I was just like, I didn't love him coming out. I could watch some of his tape. I was just like, I don't know. He seems like just another smaller school receiver to me. And he didn't have much hype either, to be fair to me. Like, it's not often that small school guys become good when they didn't have any real pre-draft hype. I think he was a kind of a surprising top 100 pick, and he was late third round. And I don't think many people saw that coming with him going that high, but man, he just goes up and attacks the football. His ball skills are on that level where you would call it an elite trait, like across the league at that position.
And I saw him up close a couple times because the Lions went to play the Raiders in training camp, and I saw him when he played the Raiders at home last year, and he's one of the best athletes in the league, just as far as size and speed. He's huge. He can separate, and he can make those catches. I think he's got to go on a list too.
Okay. I would feel fine with that. I mean, to me, I talk about Lockett and Allen as kind of being the next guys. I'm not quite as bullish on Keenan Allen as some other people are.
Yeah.
Still maybe like to see him at the list, but I would prefer Galladay, to be honest.
I'm partial to the big X wide receivers too. So, and then then you got to talk about the Keenan Allens, the Cooper Kupps, the Adam Thielen, the guy that played, the guys that are really productive in the slot. Do we, how do we include those guys in this list?
Mm-hmm. And we've got a guy like AJ Green down here at the bottom that we're injury discussion with. I think that he had slid enough that in this position group where it's so to fall behind it all is just such a deep group.
That's true.
I would feel okay about not having him on there with the asterisks that this is AJ Green and he could bounce back. But
yeah, like he could have a monster year next year because he has Burrow coming in, and he might be healthy next year, so he could bounce back and have a big year. But I think this position group is so competitive that just him battling injuries, I feel okay with leaving him off.
Right. Yeah, I feel the same way as you. So okay, we'll come back to some of these wide receivers, but what do you, if you look at this list right now, wide receivers, and you are thinking about who you value most out of who's left here, who jumps out at you?
What do you mean? Oh,
of the wideouts
that are left.
Like, is there somebody that you're like, okay, this guy?
I really like Adam Thielen. Thielen. So he'd be the next guy for me, but I could see where, an argument where you leave him off the top 100.
Yeah, man, he's good too. This is super hard because if you ask me in next season, who is going to be at the end of next season, is AJ Brown going to be beyond Adam Thielen? I don't know. Like, I think Adam Thielen's great. I think Tyler Lockett would be my next guy. But Courtland Sutton could be an animal. Like Courtland Sutton last year looked amazing. So this is where it gets really difficult to kind of nail down, and people can understand now why they see, how'd this guy not make the top 100? Well, look how hard it is. Like, I'm not excusing some of the people that leave certain players off and certain things, but some of this is really difficult because we haven't even barely talked about T.Y. Hilton. Like, he's been a monster for years. I know he had luck for some of it, but a lot of it he hasn't had him injuries and the retirement then, and he is still a really good receiver. And I don't know if he's going to be able to make the thing. So this is a tough position group. I would say Lockett and Thielen should be on. I think we lock him in.
I think so too.
Okay. Let's lock those two in. And then unless you feel strongly about somebody else, we'll come back to wide receiver.
No, I think the list looks pretty good right now.
All right, we'll come back. Love you, Keenan Allen, Courtland Sutton, Ty. Some of those guys are really good players, but it's extremely difficult to do wide receiver because so many guys are good, and it's going to be fluid depending on quarterback, offense, scheme, play calling, like who produces. It's just going to be hard to tell who's going to be dominant out of that group. Brandon's going to come back and want to be part of edge. I know Croc is going to want to do cornerback and safety. So let's finish up linebacker here. Kirk had some interesting thoughts, I thought. I mean,
he felt strongly about Anthony Barr.
He did feel strongly about Anthony Barr. I don't feel strongly about Anthony Barr. And so I was like, it sounded like he wanted him in the top one. Like he would lock him into his top 100, but it's hard for me to justify Anthony Barr over Levante David personally. I don't know if you feel the same way or.
Honestly, Anthony Barr, I think people thought he made big improvements last year, right? Because if Anthony Barr is the same player that I really watched a couple of years ago, I don't know if I would put him in the top 100. But if he really improved his game last year, I think that's what people are talking about. That maybe he belongs on that list.
I think he improved compared to the year before, but I would say the year before he wasn't even an average player in my opinion. That may be harsh to some people, but I watched a good bit of him in 2018, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I just wouldn't. I just
Yeah.
thought that, in cover, he's, first of all, there's a misunderstanding with who Anthony Barr is as a player that has been needed to be cleared up for years. Like, people think he like is, people always compare when there's a guy that plays on the edge in college that might need to move off the ball but still rush on third downs, like a Zach Barr type or Zach Bond type from Wisconsin this past season. They're like, oh, is he like Anthony Barr? And it's like, well, no, because Anthony Barr doesn't play on the edge in the NFL, and you want this guy to still play on the edge. Like, if you look at Pro Football Focus's snap breakdown, even of Anthony Barr, if you don't have time to watch all 16 games and everything, just look at their snap breakdown. He doesn't play on the edge. It doesn't happen. He might blitz up the A gaps at times. Certainly, he's blitzed at times. We know that, but he is mostly a coverage linebacker. Who plays off the ball. He's an off the ball linebacker. It's not like there's this great versatility to Anthony Barr, even though he played on the edge in college. It's just not how he's been used in the NFL, at least not in terms of hybrid positional player. That's not really who Anthony Barr is. So I think that fans always kind of say, oh, well, he's a pass rusher too. Well, I mean, just in the sense that any linebacker that gets blitzed is a pass rusher, really. Like, he's not really the super versatile player the way that fans kind of think of him as, I think.
I agree. And yeah, I don't know enough about Anthony Barr. But I mean, it does say something that Kirk wants to really put him on this list, but I don't know enough about Anthony Barr to really put him up in the top 100.
So let's maybe hold on Anthony Barr for a second, but did anybody else jump out at you and you're like, they need to be in it?
I think Darius Leonard needs to be in it.
I agree. I agree with you. And everybody knows, Darius Leonard, he and Dak are probably, I joke around all the time, probably my biggest draft misses ever because, Leonard in college, his tape just didn't impress me. And I've gone back and watched his tape and it still doesn't do anything for me, since he's been good in the NFL. And then he didn't work out really at the combine much. And then he went to his pro day and really had below average numbers at his pro day and didn't know at the time he was dealing with a little bit of an injury. And that's part of the reason why his numbers were down. But I was just like, small school linebacker without great tape, without great measurables, I didn't think blew the doors off the Senior Bowl or anything. I was like, I just don't know if I take this guy before day 3. And then they took him early second round and he became one of the best linebackers in the league. But as I watch him now, like, and there's no hesitation in his game. Instincts are all over the place. I don't know what happened. It's hard for me to, I take the L for sure on him, but to me, I don't think there's any, and I love Fred Warner coming out, Roquan, Edmonds, and all the guys that were in that class. But to me right now, Leonard's been the best linebacker in that class. I think Warner can get there too. Last year was amazing. And I would say Warner's probably the more versatile coverage linebacker, where Leonard's probably the more pure zone cover linebacker. But to me, I don't think you could make a top 100 without Leonard. The way he's played over 2 seasons, even being banged up but not fully healthy last year, he's a beast. I mean,
yeah, and he fills out every stat in the stat sheet too. Like he gets tackles, for loss. Like I had 8 sacks as a rookie year or something like that. He gets interceptions, pass defense. He does it all. So he's got to be on the list.
Right. I agree.
What Deion Jones? He's been a good player for a while now, but I don't know if you put him. Does consistency matter?
Yeah. There's an interesting conversation to be had with Deion Jones because in terms of pure coverage ability, and this is kind of a conversation you have with Corey Littleton, only more extremes, I think, with Corey Littleton, is that in pure coverage ability, Deion Jones is one of the best in the league, I think. He makes plays in coverage that not many linebackers can make. He does miss tackles, and he's consistently missed tackles throughout his career. And he's not a great run defending linebacker in the conventional sense of the word, So at what point are you willing to sacrifice run defense to a degree? I don't think he's like a horrible run defender, where Corey Littleton, you've probably seen a lot. So maybe you're going to blow me out of the water on this. But what I've seen of Corey Littleton and Rams tape and watching him is that he's an awesome coverage linebacker, great in space, unbelievable tackler. I mean, I don't know how a guy that small and that light a linebacker misses so few tackles. It's crazy how few. He just gets guys on the ground constantly. But I like between the tackles, run defense, I would not pick him. And like if I were picking, I'd maybe take 20 linebackers for that role specifically ahead of him. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I think I like him because I think the other stuff matters more. but that's just weighing all of that in today's NFL is difficult because not all these linebackers do everything well, like a Wagner or a Kendricks or a Leonard.
Yeah, I think with Littleton, I mean, I agree with you. Interior run defense is definitely not his strength, but he's also very new to playing inside linebacker. I mean, this is really his coming into his third year playing linebacker. I think he played outside linebacker, more of an edge in college, and he came into the league as a special teams guy and kind of made his way into the defensive lineup. So with Littleton there, you're thinking of, that with more experience, he could be better at diagnosing the run inside. But I'm not going to pound the table and put him in the top 100, but I wouldn't be surprised if he made a huge jump this year, his third year playing the position where he just doesn't have much experience.
Right. I'll pound the table for Lavonte David even over some of these, like over everybody else on the list. As much as I love Fred Warner and I think Demario Davis was great last year, the only other guy that I would say like I got to have on the list is Lavonte David. I'll fight for Fred Warner when that time comes, but in terms of locks, like I just think Lavonte David's been doing it at a high level, healthy. He's been great in coverage. He's great in run defense. I mean, he is the ideal weak side linebacker, chase, flow, finish. And he's been every year is great. I mean, any grading scale you go off Pro Football Focus, Tape Gurus, there's nobody who says anything bad about Lavonte David as a player. Everybody I know, I trust, speaks highly of him. When I watch them, I've been watching the Bucs, a lot of Bucs tape. I can't believe how many places he makes in space against screens and stuff out on the perimeters. I mean, there's not a lot of linebackers with that kind of range and that kind of finishing ability with the consistent processing. To me, I think he's absolutely a top 100 player in the NFL. I was a little bit surprised Kirk wasn't more bullish on him. I feel like he's a guy that ex-NFL players are usually like, get this guy in here. Like nobody talks about him because he plays in Tampa and he's great, and I think he obviously liked him, but I would think I know I'm covering the Bucs now. And so maybe that sounds a little biased, but I don't know. Do you agree with me on David? I feel like he's got to be in there.
Yeah, I think he's got to be in there, and I think the position is so fluid right now that I think that he should be in there just because there's not a lot of guys with yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know if I'd lock anybody else in, but come back to it for sure. But I don't know if I'd lock anybody else in just yet because I just think that, like you said, the position's so fluid, and there's other if we have to have 4 linebackers, but we get 20 receivers. Well, if those receivers are just better at what they do than linebackers, then I feel like we almost live with it at that point.
Yeah, and like we talked about, there's a lot of linebackers that just don't have that great body to work just yet. So
right, exactly.
Maybe
so it's fine to wait.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe next year they establish themselves, and then we get more linebackers on the list. But I'm fine not putting a lot of linebackers on the list this year.
Right, exactly. I completely agree with that. Okay, let's do it. Edge defenders. Brandon will be back any minute now. He's doing a radio spot, I think, and then he'll be back. He'll be back with us, so he can jump into the middle of this. But this is a stacked position group, and I am very comfortable with loading it up because it's that good. I don't want to leave good players off in this position group. So, who jumps out of you right now? Who are the locks as you look at this list?
Von Miller, Khalil Mack, J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, Joey Bosa. And what do you think about Nick Bosa? I mean, he was so dominant last year, but it's just
I don't know how you could keep him off. I know it's only been 1 year, but I mean, the guy was top 5 player in the NFL in his position probably last year. I mean, he was unbelievable. I'd have to have him on, I think.
Yeah, let's put him on.
The Bosas, Chandler Jones, Myles Garrett, right?
Yeah.
Myles Garrett. There's interesting discussions to be had here too with some of these other guys that we'll get to in a second. Cam Jordan, you can't make the list without Cam Jordan, right?
Yeah.
Brandon will come back and Brandon will be so mad. He loves Cam Jordan.
And TJ Watt, he's been so productive too.
Yeah. I mean, over the last 3 years, I think only like 1 or 2 players have more sacks than TJ Watt. He's a no-brainer to me. Danielle Hunter, I don't know how you can't make a list without him, right? Like, I know it's tough because we're cutting, we're getting a lot of players up there, but he's dynamic, run and pass, consistency, never hurt. I mean, his numbers, his age and his numbers combined, like we could be talking about a guy who finishes in the top 3 sacks all time just because he was like 10 years old when he entered the league. So I know I'm not saying like down to down. If you were picking like a top 10 of guys you'd want rushing like on a third down for all the, for all the marbles, you'd pick him in your top 10 necessarily, but that's just because the position's so good across the league, right?
I agree.
I
And
don't think you have to have
I've seen a lot of Melvin Ingram, and I think Melvin Ingram is just one of the better players in the league too. Is pass rush, he can play off ball. He's so good.
Would you put him in over Za'Darius or DeMarcus?
I would put him in personally, but
okay.
I'm curious what you guys think.
Brandon, you back?
Yeah,
I hear Brandon. Oh, nice. We're just jumped into edge defender, Brandon. We knew you'd be joining us again in any second now. What do you think of our locks so far? We were just discussing Za'Darius, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Melvin Ingram a little bit in the next tier, but we threw up our locks pretty quickly. A little conversation on Danielle Hunter, but I think.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. And now it gets interesting.
Nice, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I really like what Ted said. That take right there. I mean that'll ruffle some feathers, but I'm all for it. Melvin Ingram over Za'Darius. I like that. So yeah, I mean, Za'Darius last year was better than Melvin Ingram, but if you look at them in a vacuum, if you look at their skill set, how long they've been at that level, Ingram, is a better player, I think.
Okay.
So it's close, but I don't know. In terms of those two, I would probably lean Ingram, but I personally would probably put DeMarcus Lawrence over both of them. So I don't know. I think there's a strong case for D-Law here.
Yeah. Well, the difficult thing about Za'Darius Smith is that he has been, he was kind of a nobody, just kind of an extra guy, an extra defensive lineman. Nobody thought anything of him. Then he was pretty, good his last year with the Ravens. He's pretty solid, got paid. And then last year you could make an argument last year he was a top 5 defensive player in the game. I know they move him around and find him some favorable matchups at times and stuff, but he was just a complete monster in certain games. Like
he was.
He's just throwing guys around and rushing from all kinds of, everywhere on the defensive line, and the versatility, his strength. I mean, he's a dog when he's on the field. Like he's a competitor. I loved watching him play this past season, but we are basing a lot off of a guy with it's not like he was a first round pick rookie like Nick Bosa who dominated for a season. Well, we expect Nick Bosa is going to do this for forever. I don't even care about the one season thing. He was that good. It's not a big deal to me, but Za'Darius, he was in the league for a while, maybe he's a late bloomer and he does this every year. I guess maybe I'm wrong to be a little bit skeptical, but I just think going into the next season, I don't know. I personally, I think DeMarcus Lawrence is a bet. If I knew both of them were going to be healthy and I need an edge defender for my team and they cost the same amount and all that, I would prefer DeMarcus Lawrence to Za'Darius Smith, which seems crazy maybe to some people because their sack numbers were far off last year, but Lawrence is just a really good all-around player, I think.
Yeah, man. I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence, he gets obviously a ton of attention. There's some metrics out there that show he got double teamed, at a rate that was up there with pretty much everybody. I think he's top 5, top 10 in terms of how much he got double teamed. And last year was a little bit of a down year for him, and Za'Darius had the best year that he's ever had by far. So there's some recency bias there that I think is affecting some people. But in terms of just pure skill set, how they win against the run, how they win again, as a pass rusher, all around play, and how long they've been at that level. I think D-Law is better. Za'Darius Smith, like you said, I mean, last year was the first year of his career where he started more than 8 games. That I would need to see it again from him. He's on that list to me. If he does that again, then we could bump him up to top 10 edge rusher in the league. or something like that, maybe higher. But I really would like to see it again from him. And I don't think it's crazy to put him in the top 100 either. I just, I don't know how many names we have to do this, but I would like to see D-Law and Smith on the list, really.
Right. And I'd be fine with that too, to be honest. Like I feel like that could be, to me, both could definitely be worthy. Right now we've got 72 names that are on this list. We've still got corners and safeties to go. And look, there's some good wideouts that aren't on the list either. Zach Ertz isn't on the list yet. Stafford, Ryan Wentz, Tunsil. I mean, this is tough.
I'm glad you guys put on Levante David.
Yeah.
I was about to jump out the screen when, we were talking about him. It's just like Levante David. And one thing that I'll say about what Kirk was saying that I disagree with personally, nothing against Kirk, obviously I watched him as a kid and stuff. I love his insight and stuff, but like talking about, national TV and stuff like that type of stuff to me is overrated. I mean, you look at Levante David, the last 8 seasons, if you watch him, he has absolutely been an elite player in the league, and he's just criminally underrated. He averages 14.5 tackles for loss in his career over 8 years as an off-ball linebacker. I mean, I don't think he's played less than 13 games once in 8 years. So by Kirk's, standards, which I think we should, talk about because I think they're good in terms of guys who have proven it. I mean, Levante David has to be on the list if you're going to talk about guys who have proven it year in, year out for 8 years. And so I just had to say that about Levante. I'm such a big Levante fan, and I think he, really deserves the talk. But what did you guys think about Rashaan Evans? Do I just overrate him? I feel like he's like he when you watch the Titans defense, he jumps off the screen to me. I don't know. Do you guys think he's worthy at all? Not yet. Is he a liability in coverage? I don't know.
I haven't seen enough of him yet.
That coverage is where he's not as good. Yeah, coverage is, and that's in today's NFL linebacker. Stylistically, I love how he plays. That Patriots playoff game. Oh man,
he's a monster.
Yeah, he was
his
a
presence
monster.
It's unreal.
Yeah,
But Patrick Mahomes made him look stupid on that one run, though. So I don't know.
But how are you going to knock him for that?
I know. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I agree.
That was pretty bad, though.
But when you watch him down in, down out, he's very good. And any Roquan takes at all? Did he just have kind of a down year?
Healthy, I think.
Healthy. Yeah. Okay.
Have you seen him, Ted?
What do you guys think about Shaq Barrett? I mean, he only had that one good year, but it was such a good year.
I know
that you might, you might see him as a guy that's on an upward trend.
Right.
I mean, the thing I think, he had a lot of sacks for sure. I know at least 4 or 5 of those weren't very high quality. They were kind of cleanup sacks, but then again, a lot of his sacks were unreal pass rush moves as well. He's going to be 28 this year, and this was his first year that he really was, it's really the first year he had an opportunity to start. So, that's also to be fair to him, but I don't know. I need to see it again with him, I think, before I put him in this company, but I like Frank Clark if we're going to talk about a guy. And Ngakwe, I mean, those guys they stand out to me, I think, probably the most.
I got to run.
Yeah, go ahead, Ted. Thank you so much for the insight, Ted, and taking your time. Appreciate it, man.
No problem. All right, see you guys.
See ya. Yeah, completely agree, though, with what you're saying, Brandon, about Shaq Barrett. Obviously the guy who covers the Bucs, fans will be upset to not see him on there. And in some ways, I know what they're going to say. The guy led the league in sacks. How could he not be on the list? And I get that, but also he hadn't done. I mean, he'd been okay in little flashes for Denver, but he was 20 years old and hadn't done anything before this. If we're disqualifying Zadarius Smith, if we are, and I'm not saying we are, but Zadarius Smith was actually a solid player before this past season. He was a good player before this past season. You would have probably put from the elite to high quality, good, average grading scale. You would have put him definitely above average. So probably he's a good player for Zadarius Smith. I don't know that you could have put Shaq Barrett there before this season. because we hadn't even seen him be on the field like enough to know. And so I agree with you too, that he led the league in sacks and had a great season. I would not say that he had a season worthy of leading the league in sacks, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't like he was producing pressure at a rate comparable to the guys on the list above him, except maybe Ingram last year. But, that's the only thing I would say there, is that, like, I think Shaq Barrett's a good player, and I would love to consider him for a top 100. I know how hard it is to get into the top 100. I know that we would have to cut some people whose careers have suggested they're more deserving than Shaq Barrett's career has suggested. Now, if he has another monster year, like, we're going to lock him in, because
Right. For sure.
And there's nothing wrong with not making the top 100. Like,
No, that's the thing. These are all very good players.
That's
you know,
right.
So
So I'm hopeful for him moving forward and stuff. But right now, I don't know if I'd lock him in. I would say like let's lock in DeMarcus Lawrence and Za'Darius Smith, right?
yeah, I think we should.
I think that it's fair to lock those guys in and feel fine about that. There's some other good players. Justin Houston, I know he's fallen off and not what he once was, and maybe some people like, oh, he shouldn't be in there. And you can't put Brandon Graham on the list probably because he's never had a double-digit sack season. And, I know that's not everything, but when you've played that long, it's probably something you have to make the top 100. But good player, good football player.
There's other guys I'd have over him,
Right.
I think I'd rather have Matt Judon for 2020 than Justin Houston, I think. And,
yeah, that's fair.
There's a couple other guys, but from the guys that are sitting there now, I think Frank Clark and Ngakwe stand out definitely.
Right.
But
Right.
we should probably go to another position.
Okay, let's go. I told Croc we were trying to hold off on DBs for him, but I haven't heard from him, and so I don't know what's going on with his situation in his car. So,
Okay.
let's jump to corners. Let's finish these locks up, and then we'll be ready to cut the last handful of names and stuff there. So, cornerback locks. Sherm's a lock, right? No doubt.
Yeah.
Lattimore's a lock. Trey White, Stephon Gilmore, Casey Hayward. To me, those 5 are locks. I'd say those are the best 5 corners in the league. Disagree or?
No, I don't think so. Let me look. Yeah, I like we talked about before we came on, I really like Marlon Humphrey as kind of the next guy we can consider. And I feel like Jalen Ramsey, obviously talent-wise, he should be in there.
Right.
So
we got to have Jalen Ramsey on the list because, like, this season he could be the best corner in the league, and he's been the best corner in the league before. But I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, I did not think in 2018 he was as good as he should be. And in 2019, I would literally just say Jalen Ramsey wasn't very good. Like, so that's my hesitation. Like, he just straight up did not play at his ability. Like, I don't know what, I don't want to like question a player's like effort or what, but he went to the Rams. He was the same thing in Jacksonville. Like, he was just, his technique was all over the place. He was trying to like, I don't even know what he was trying to do. He's like, he just freelanced for like full games. And then he went to the Rams. I thought everything would change. And he did the same thing for a while there. Maybe late in the season, it started to turn around. I'm not sure, but there were just too many reps where he was just like, his technique was just really, really bad. And Juju Smith-Schuster wasn't even like that good. And he just like lit him up last year, and he lit him up and so I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. I think he still makes this list, but I'm concerned.
Yeah, maybe we just have to see it with him, and put these other young up and coming guys like Jared Alexander, Byron Jones, Marlon Humphrey. Those guys are the 3 that stand out to me, and Patrick Peterson, as well.
Right.
This is tough. Humphrey
it's
for
about
me
to get tougher.
Yeah, I know. Humphrey for me is a guy who really kind of stands out. But just because I think he's pretty unique, in the way that he plays, the physicality that he brings to the position, and just I feel like as a receiver going against Marlon Humphrey is really it's a task because he's so like taxing on guys.
Right.
And he plays inside and outside. So that one jumps out to me. Maybe we could do the locks for safeties and then just come like bounce back and forth.
Right. That sounds good. Yeah. Because I kind of agree with you on Humphrey. I did think he does get beat, but all corners get beat. It's kind of the same, different types of players totally. But Marcus Peters
Yeah.
is kind of like the same way. Like the guy takes the ball way better than anybody in the league. He also gives up plays. And where do you find that balance with guys like that? It's hard. And Humphrey is a really good player. He also will give up plays down the field, and I know Humphrey was one of my guys coming out. Like I had a first round grade on him. Some people didn't like him at all and thought that like it was way too high. But I loved him coming out, and I think he's been really good. But it is hard when you're talking about top 100. So let's jump to safety because I agree with a lot of what you're saying though.
Okay, yeah.
Minka, Derwin,
Yep.
Earl, no question, right?
I mean, was he the same, guy the whole year? Because I mean, he got abused like 4 or 5 times, but that was made more so as a tackler. So, in coverage, he was elite, right? I mean,
in coverage, he was still really good. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
'cause he got, but that was, as a tackler. But
Right.
yeah, I think Kevin Byard should be a lock as well.
I'd agree with you on that. I don't know how I couldn't make a list without Byard. I don't think all
Yeah.
around, just really good player, coverage, run defense, tackling, ball
Yeah.
skills. I don't know that I would have a complaint with Kevin Byard's game.
And Jamal
Man,
Adams has to be on. I mean,
Yeah, he does. Yeah. This is your guy. Now, Jamal Adams is an interesting discussion. I agree with you that he's on. Let's get that out of the way. Like, I agree with you that he's on. But I think where would you rank Jamal Adams right now in safeties in the NFL?
well, I think your point, is really, that's something that I need to consider more in terms of a guy who plays, the deep safety, single high type situations a lot, and can really patrol that back end, which is something that Jamal Adams maybe doesn't do, on the same frequency as these other guys, which is fair. But I think when he has had to do it, the times that I've seen him, I haven't dug through all the numbers, but I've watched a lot of Jamal Adams and I've seen him do it at a high level, just not a whole lot. So I think he can do it, but I just, I think his overall impact is just so powerful on the field in terms of what he does in the front seven. Really it's special. And covering tight ends, he's a very good, from what I've seen, at least, like covering tight ends, I think he's really good in that regard. But in terms of ranking, I mean, like I'd probably put him, like no worse than the fourth guy. Like I'd probably take him over Earl Thomas at this point.
Sure.
Just moving forward, but then Derwin, Minka, and Byard, those guys would all be like tier 1 for me.
Yeah. It's difficult because it's almost like totally different positions. Like Jamal Adams doesn't play the same position as Minka Fitzpatrick. Like last year, they could not have been more different. Like Jamal Adams was in the box more than any other safety, pass rush snaps more than any other safety other than Chuck Clark from Baltimore. In third place isn't even close. Like there's not anybody even in the same vicinity as those guys in terms of pass rush snaps from a safety. It's like 40 snap difference. So he is just so unique in the way that he's deployed. And he only, he's about average for the NFL, maybe below average for the NFL in terms of snaps in the slot and slot coverage. He spends a lot of time in 2 high shells as a deep safety or near the line of scrimmage, blitzing or in the box playing the run as an underneath zone defender, something like that, some type of middle hook defender. Like, so his coverage assignments, I would say, are typically eeasier, and he is almost never in the wrong place. I mean, literally the guy is so smart. He's almost never in the wrong place. He just doesn't play like super instinctive in deep coverage. And that's I watched every target of his this past week, just to kind of, because I was putting out takes about him. I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about and stuff. So my concern with Jamal Adams is that he doesn't play really instinctive in deep coverage. He almost always makes a sure tackle. If guy gets behind a corner or something, the first layer of the defense, he's there to make tackles. But I see him see things, but then he slow plays them to tackle guys. And I think he did the same thing in college, really. It's my one knock on him and why I would keep him out of the elite tier of players across the NFL and just keep him in the high quality tier, is that I don't think he makes a ton of plays on the ball. People are like, oh yeah, he passes defense. A lot of them he's knocking down at the line of scrimmage as a blitzer. By the way, he is an elite pass rusher, Brandon. He is an unbelievable pass rusher, and he's a safety. It's insane to watch him play. He cannot be blocked.
Yeah. Yeah, man. He's very different. And if you're asking him to do things that you're talking about playing, single high and, covering the deep half and stuff like that, then I totally get having him
Yeah.
in tier 2, but just overall impact, and if you say, here's all the safeties in the league, here's a really good defensive coordinator, pick your top, 3 or 4. I feel like Jamal Adams would have to be in there just because his impact rushing the passer, defending the run, making instinctual plays and big plays, and like his just impact is so big, and
Right.
he's just such a special player that
Mhm.
I think it kind of makes up for what he lacks to
Sure.
a point where he can be on their level just in it, because of different reasons.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting discussion for sure.
Especially with him because he's so unique. I mean, there's not another safety in the league that really plays the way he does, not only in terms of alignment, but just in terms of responsibility. Like, I talked about the pass rush stuff is crazy with him. He's over 100 pass rush snaps as a safety. It's just very bizarre. Like, you don't see that very often. And so there's that aspect of it, but also because you're right, when he is in man coverage, which I would like to see almost more of, because I thought he did a pretty good job against tight ends last year. I mean, there's times where he got by Ertz and Witten. I saw a couple times on tape, but there were other good reps too. He literally just obliterated Goddard on one-man coverage rep. Like, he ate him alive. And so he has really good ability there too. And the other thing about him, I cannot believe the guy's motor. I mean, he makes plays all the time that are nowhere near him. Like, and against the run, like tackles and stuff, like a ball thrown to the other side of the field, and he like literally just nonstop. Other guys miss the tackle. He gets there and lays the guy out. Like, that kind of stuff like gets me juiced. So he is like one of those players that I would say is like, when you grow up, everybody's going to talk about like how we talk about John Lynch and See
Right.
Atwater and those kind of guys. Like, people will talk about Jamal Adams like that because he was so much fun to watch. And
Yeah.
I think that'll be great. I would say I would not trade a first and a third round pick for him and then pay him higher than any other safety in the league. That's where I draw the line with his game. So I hope I'm properly saying that he's an awesome player,
Yeah.
but the value for me isn't enough to, because if you're trading for him, you're also going to make him the highest paid player at his position.
Yeah.
So.
Right. That's fair. I mean, I would consider it,
Right.
just because like there's a lot of emotion attached to his style of play,
Yes.
both on the field, but both as a viewer, like, yeah, like you said, with Lynch and Atwater and Brian Dawkins and guys like that, who just, they elicit this emotional response when you watch them. That is just like,
Mhm.
it's like, oh my gosh. And you kind of know the leadership, that he has, both that we've heard over the years and stuff like that from
Right.
teammates I've heard, like just
Mhm.
what he is in the locker room. I think that type of stuff too should be factored in to some
Yep.
degree. And I think that is another thing that would make me real comfortable about giving up a lot for him and paying him a lot of money, because you never have to worry about him, and he's going to elevate other guys, and just be like that model citizen, great
Right.
leader type of guy. And, not saying other guys on this list aren't that, but I think he is just
Sure.
kind of in a rarefied air in that regard as well. So that's a little piece that I just would
Mhm.
consider as well with him.
Right. I mean, you kind of get all 5 safeties that we've locked in here. You kind of get that with, and that's the kind of, you can't, like, we can only to a degree from what we heard and know speak to that cultural impact that those kind of guys have. And that is a huge part of the consideration. So maybe in the end, that does end up being worth it. I'd pay him if I were the Jets. I'd pay him in a heartbeat if I were
Yeah.
the Jets. But if I'm a team giving up 2 high-end assets and then also paying him, I'd want like Earl Thomas in his prime type of impact. Like,
Gotcha.
where guys, like, for 4 years, nobody caught a ball on him. Like,
Right.
kind of, dominance at that position. That's my thoughts on it. But you're right about the culture thing. It does matter. So looking at the rest of the safety group, you watch Justin Simmons all the time. This past season, I thought he took a huge leap.
Yeah, dude. He's a guy who's very versatile, and he plays, he could play the deep half really at a really high level. He has a true like free safety, and in Denver, the safeties rotate a lot, so he plays in 2 high shells and closer to the line of scrimmage, and does good things against the run. He provides a good presence there as well. So he's very well rounded. Even though he might be known a little bit more for his coverage, I think he's an underrated guy versus the run. And I think the arrows just pointed up for him. He's special, I think. So yeah, Simmons would be the next guy for me off that list. but it's close, man. I mean, like, I haven't watched Harrison Smith a lot last year, but
Yeah.
18, 17, I mean, judging on that, he should be on. I don't know. What do you think from him from last year?
Yeah, Harrison Smith's a tricky one because I also didn't see much of him last year. I'm going off grading scales and what people I know, say about Harrison Smith because I didn't see a ton of him. I saw more Anthony Harris just watching him when, people were like, oh, Anthony Harris should get paid in free agency. Well, I was like, oh, maybe the Bucks will pay him. That back when we didn't know Bucks had all this money and we didn't know how they'd spend it. So I was like, I'll watch Anthony Harris, and he's a baller. Like, there's no doubt. Like, I would say Anthony Harris has almost had 2 seasons now as one of the best safeties in the league. And this is another position, Brandon, where it's just hard because, I mean, you could honestly tell me that Harrison Smith, Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus Williams, Eddie Jackson, Devin McCourty, and Anthony Harris were all on this list, and I wouldn't bat an eye. And that's a lot of safeties. But I think they're all really, really good players. Like, I would feel bad about leaving any of them off unless you're saying McCourty's going to fall off. McCourty was dominant last year. I don't know. To be honest, the most volatile guy left on here is Tyrann Mathieu. And I love him, and I love what he brought to the field last year. And you could honestly say the Chiefs don't win a Super Bowl without him in some ways because he literally was so important to that defense. But a couple years before that, he's just been, a solid player. Like, there's been ups and downs. He gives up a lot of catches. He's always a player that's going to give it up and take it away, and to some degree be kind of that type of player. He's not like an eraser that you like Byron Jones. He races guys, but then doesn't make plays on the ball. It's kind of like, okay, how do we
right?
And so with Tyrann Mathieu, there's always going to be this give and take a little bit. And last year he was really good. If he falls off and is an average player again this next year, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know how you could not include him though. Like, it's Tyrann Mathieu, and he's had a lot of good plays over his career.
And I think he has that special quality about him where guys gravitate towards him, and he really elevates the play of others around him, like on a level that's, just really rare. So that's something, just to consider as well, even if there's some inconsistencies in his on-field play. I think that can kind of, solidify his case a little bit more. Maybe we eliminate a couple guys from corner and safety, and maybe that'll make it a little easier. I don't know. What do you
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, and you saw Kareem Jackson this past season. He was really, really good.
Oh yeah, he was. But
like 1 year at safety. I know he's older.
I don't think he should be on.
Right. Like, it's just like, I don't
the way he plays, but
right. Micah Hyde, same thing. Like, I don't know that you would say that he's a really good player, but top 100, we're gonna have to start cutting. So I would almost take those 2 guys off. And I love Budda Baker to death. I just need 1 more year of it, I thought last year he did some awesome things. Like, some of his best plays are amazing, but there's also
he's incredible.
They put him in a lot of really hard spots because they don't have any other good players.
Yeah.
So he has to cover. I mean, he's going up against George Kittle, and everybody remembers the play where Kittle just, mossed him, separated from him and then threw him on the ground. But that game, he had 4 or 5 great plays against Kittle, and nobody remembers those. So I think he's a really good player. I'd love to consider him, but I don't.
And
I couldn't put him against anybody else.
It's only 1 year, right?
2 years. I mean, Anthony Harris has been starter 2 years in Minnesota, and both years
same level.
Yeah, both years been really, really good and taking the ball away at a high level too.
Okay, so that's a consideration.
Let's take a look real quick at what kind of numbers we're dealing with him. But this is probably the hardest position in the league because I think there's to do this with. I think because there's not like a huge clear drop off to me. Like a lot of these guys are really good and really we haven't seen much bad play in the NFL since Anthony Harris got in the starting lineup. We haven't seen it. Harrison Smith, Marcus Williams, Eddie Jackson, Devin McCourty, these guys haven't really played bad football, so it's hard to say it was only 1 year. Well, every year they've been out there, they've been pretty good. And, so it's hard for me to, take that away from them. But yeah, 2018, he was out there as a starter almost the whole season, had 3 picks, 6 pass breakups last year, but got 9 picks over the last 2 years. He's just been a difference maker. So it's hard for me to cut anyone else other than Budda. But I think that if I were going to move one more safety up right now, I feel like it almost has to be Eddie Jackson. And I know last year wasn't his best year, but 2 really good years before that. He wasn't bad last year for sure. makes plays on the ball, covers in man.
Yeah, I'm good with Eddie Jackson there.
Yeah, he's a really good player.
Yeah, he is.
And I also am not sure I could leave Harrison Smith off. Consistently, he's just been a really good player every single year. I mean,
Yeah,
run defense, deep coverage.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of it like if I'm asking myself, who would I bet on that is going to be the best player in 2020 off that list, and who would I have the most confidence in? I mean, it'd be probably Harrison Smith and Teron Matthew. You know, those would be
Right.
you know the two guys for me. I haven't really seen, to be fair, to the guy that I've seen the least of on that list is Marcus Williams. So
Okay.
I'm really not familiar with his game. So.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Marcus Williams, especially this past week. I watched a ton of him because, again, I was putting out takes on him, so I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And, yeah, he is a real – like, most of his season was spent cleaning up Von Bell and Eli Apple's mistakes. Like, that was a ton of his year. Like, there's so many times in play where Von Bell gets beat and he, like, runs over from the other side of the field and helps make a play. I mean, it was comical to watch. And then he yells at guys after the play, too. Like, he'll get in guys' ear. Eli Apple didn't sink in cover 2 on one play, and Williams had to bust his tail to make the tackle on a catch on a corner route, and Eli Apple hadn't sank, and he got chewed out. So he's a fiery dude. He will hit. He is not the best tackler in the league, but he is not because of lack of effort at all. He actually makes a ton of tackles for a single high safety, for a guy who's single high most of the time. He will match up in man, but most of the time he's a deep safety, either 2 high shells or deep free safety and single high. And he makes a lot of plays on the ball every year. He's got 9 picks or something last couple of years. I mean, or 11 picks or something like that. I was looking the other day. He's made a ton of interceptions over the last couple of years. I tweeted a couple of his best plays from this past season out. So he is a really good player. I think he should make this list, but I won't put him in the locks, which is still where we're at. I think we might have a guest joining us here shortly to help us.
Oh, sweet.
Help us break this down. So, so we are at right now 88 players that we consider locks. So we have 12 spots left for all these players that are in a vacuum clearly deserving of this kind of recognition. But here, I don't think we could ever give it to them.
The guys that stand out to me, Calais Campbell and Trent Brown, as far as O&D line.
Okay.
Those guys.
Trent Brown over Brian Bulaga and over just because of injuries, or
probably, yeah. But even though Trent was banged up last year, I think Trent, when he's on, man, I mean, and he's still, I probably would have a little bit more confidence in 2020 in him than Bulaga. But that one's so tough, man. I mean, and then Tunsil too. Like, I think you could probably take everyone off the list except Tunsil, Bulaga, and Brown. Those are the guys to me who are really standing out.
Okay. So Jake Matthews, Anthony Costanzo, Andrew Whitworth. Peters isn't even on a team right now, so it's hard to include him because we don't even know if he'll be in the league this year. You take Luan off.
Yeah, they're good players. I see the other guys in kind of a different tier.
Okay, so these are the tackles left you'd consider right here.
Yeah, those that's tough to pick, 1 or 2, and then guards and centers. I'd probably take off Turner, Jones, Kelly. Just his health, man. I mean, he could easily be. Yeah. But just the health for him is a concern.
Right.
McCoy just 1 year, even though he was a stud.
Right. Ragnow's on his way, but probably maybe next year, right?
I'd probably take both them off. Yeah. McCoy and him.
Both really good players. I mean, probably the future at the position probably is guys like Hudson and Kelsey and Mack get older.
Yep.
And Pouncey. I mean, that decline is probably coming for those guys, whether they like it or not. And you look at the list of guys we have. I mean, we have no other. So like Hudson, Kelsey, and Mack are our only centers on the list, and they're all over 30, right? I mean,
yep.
Maybe over 31 or 32. I mean, they're all older.
Yeah, they're up there for sure.
Right. Still good right now, but that decline's coming, and so we're looking for that next wave of centers. This position, Incognito's older. We could be talking about a decent amount of turnover in terms of we're looking for the next stars at some of this position for the future. I think
Shaq Mason has a case. We can add his name up here.
That's a good point. Actually, a lot of people mention Shaq Mason's name to me.
Yeah, dude,
he just keeps getting better every year I watch him. Early on, I thought good run defender. He's always going to be a liability in pass pro. And then he just
Dude,
keeps
he's
getting
good.
better. Yeah.
Really, really good. And defensive tackle, I'd probably take out McCoy, Vea.
Yeah. Vea on his way for sure. Tuitt's got to stay healthy. That's the
I'd
big
probably
thing.
take those three out. And,
Hargrave, this will be his first season as like a full time, even though he's been awesome in what we've
Yeah.
seen.
I really like him a lot. And
Right.
Armstead too. I'm not ready to put him here, even though he had a really good year. I don't know what you think about him, but
I love him, but I'm completely with you. Like at this point, I don't know that we can put Armstead in the list. Like we're talking about 12 spots. He's not going to make it.
yeah, Gino. It pains me to say it because he has been like
know.
a top 5 guy for a long time, but I think
Right.
his time has passed on this list.
Right. Exactly. I mean, he could have a bounce back year, and I hope he does. But
Yeah.
not that he's a bad player. He's still a good player. But we're talking about 12 spots right now. Like I think we can take Brandon Graham and Justin Houston out for edge rusher.
Yep.
Um,
I'm with you on that. That can at least
I
clear
think-
things up.
I know that Kirk Morrison really likes Anthony Barr, but I would not consider him for a top 200 personally.
I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't. I just am not a big fan, and I'm kind of been outspoken about that. So I feel like I need to stay consistent with that. I like Littleton, but
Big name, but I don't see it there. Littleton,
Right.
I mean, I
good
don't know.
player. But
I couldn't put him over Fred Warner.
right. Yeah, there's that's the thing. Good player, but no way he's making this list. I mean, same thing with Xavier Howard to me. Like, there's just no way he's making this list
Okay, yeah.
at corner. Good player, but
Man, I think receiver is tough. I just looked at it for the first time. I'd probably take, from like, I don't know. What do you think about Metcalf down? Just
look who it is.
What up?
Trevor Sycamore.
What's going on, boys?
Not too much. We actually have had people kind of in and out the whole time, Trevor. So we missed Mark Schofield was on earlier. Kirk Morrison was on. Ted has been on with us the whole time. Just had to step out.
Oh, I missed Mark.
Yeah, you missed Mark. He was
good.
He was on. Yeah. You dodged a bullet there. Big time bullet dodge.
Just kidding. Mark's my boy.
Who else have we had? Oh, Eric Crocker's not shown up. So we're still trying. He's actually running home right now, I believe, from the mechanic, which his car, hopefully it's not too bad, but ended up taking too long. So hopefully he joins at some point while you're on here too.
The real Eric would have just fixed himself. That's all I'm saying.
Tell him.
No, I'll log off the second he logs on.
I was going to say, as soon as you see
be a
him,
coward about it. Just dip out.
So right now, take a look at our board here. Can you see this screen? You can see this board, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. First of all, see if there's enough Tampa Bay Buccaneers on it, and then
No,
second,
there's
of all,
not. I already know. There's just not.
Second, Brandon's fighting for Ryan Jensen right now, so you may.
He's
get,
fighting for Ryan Jensen to be on it or to be
to
off
be on
it.
it. To be on it. No, to be on it.
Who? Why? Like, what would be preventing him to be on it?
Preventing him from being on it?
Yes.
Look at the 88. There's 88 names that are on it right now. Look at those 88 names. Realize there are 12 spots left.
Okay.
And then look at the players underneath the gray bar. Those are the players we have to consider for the 12 spots left.
It's tough.
And I'm ready to lock in a couple people, Brandon, for those spots. Like,
yeah.
Top 100 players. I mean, of the guys that are not on here right now, I feel like Fred Warner is absolutely one of the top 100 players in the NFL.
that's my boy. I would agree.
Yeah.
I'm with that.
agree with you.
Fred Warner's 100% on there. As weird as it is with the drama surrounding him, I feel like Yannick Ngakoue has got to be on there.
Yannick Ngakoue,
Yeah.
you vote for him? Oh boy, I like him a lot too. But we got 12 spots, and Frank Clark's a good player.
Can you only have like so many edge rushers and
No,
many,
you could
so it could
all
be
three of
anybody?
those guys could make it. Yeah, we'd only have 91 spot, or we'd only have 9 spots left.
Yeah, I feel like
It's pretty
I feel
hard.
like Ngakoue's got to be in there. Are there any other like egregious ones?
Calais Campbell's pretty good. I think Zach Ertz has to be in there. I would-
Okay. So Zach Ertz is not in there. I think Zach Ertz got to be in there. I'm looking at Keenan Allen. I would think I might put in there. Jair Alexander, I might put in there. Ooh. Do I put Marcus Williams in there?
He's good.
I know
He's
he
good.
is.
Are we all in
There's-
agreement Zach Ertz has got to be on there?
Yeah.
Brandon,
think
you
Z- I
Yeah.
think Zach Ertz has to be on there, and I think Fred Warner has to be on there.
I mean, I'm going to stand on the table for Fred. I've just been waiting. I
Is
knew he wasn't
Brandon,
going to
is Brandon saying no to Fred Warner?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't think so.
No, we talked about him a little bit.
Kirk Morrison was on Talking Linebackers, and Kirk was like, yeah, I just want to see it. Can he do it another year? Kind of, but he also didn't put many people in, so it wasn't like he was standing for other guys over Fred Warner. But Fred
Right.
Warner, I think he's going to be one of the best defensive players in the league next season.
Oh, we put Gronk in here? That's amazing.
Well, here's our thought process: is that Trent Williams. We put Trent Williams in, and it was like, well, Trent didn't play last year, but he was
Yeah.
a dominant player up until that. And it's like the
Right.
same thing with Gronk, right? I mean, he was a dominant player, didn't play last year. So
like those guys could
Process kinda
conceivably
stay the
be
same.
Right.
the best in the league at the position. And
Right.
it's tough.
it's hard not to include guys that you have the force, like we have the foresight to know they could literally be a top 1 to 3 player at their position in the league.
Yeah.
That could happen and would not surprise anyone. It's hard to say that they shouldn't be a top 100 player in the league then,
Right.
but
Hold
we
on,
lose spots there too. We
Hold
lose
on. I
two
got to get my
spots.
computer charger. It's going to die, and then we'll dig into these dudes.
Okay. All right. So Ertz is in.
Yeah, that's right. I think you could probably delete that tight end list. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
maybe Waller. I don't know.
I like I would put Andrews in next personally,
Okay.
but I love Waller.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
Andrews done it for 2 seasons now, and Waller's done it for 1. That's the difference.
right. Yeah. True. I love Henry. I think Henry could be the best of that group.
Yeah.
You know,
He's definitely good if he stays healthy. Yeah. I mean, he's just got to stay healthy. But
yeah.
okay, so the tight end group's cut down. Do we cut anybody else from this cornerback group? I mean, I love Darius Slay, but there's no chance he makes it, right? Like,
I don't
right?
know, man. I mean,
I mean, he's good, but we need Croc. We need Croc to be here to guide us on these corners.
yeah.
He's running back from the mechanic right now.
What about Jonah?
Jonah Talls. Yeah, we could get him on here.
Jonah
Yeah.
Williams? No, I wouldn't put him on here.
Not Jonah Williams. Give him a year to be healthy first. What about let's cut some of these wideouts down. Like John Brown can get out of here, right?
Yeah.
Good player.
No, I don't know, man.
John
I'm
Brown, make the
just
case
I'm
for
kidding.
John
I'm gonna make
Even
this
if he's
extremely
good, we'll
difficult.
never-
Every player that you're gonna bring up, I'm gonna be like, I don't know about that, just to make this exercise really difficult on you.
Even if he's good, we'll never know because Josh Allen can't hit him deep. So
Yikes.
okay.
Truth.
Now the Bills fans have logged off. What about
No, it's
Jordan
okay.
Love?
I wrote an article earlier today saying that the Bills could be a potential dynasty in the near future. So, I mean, Bills fans have to tune in because I'm on the show. So it evens out. They don't know what to do.
Honorary Bills Mafia member.
Yeah. Throw me through a table, baby.
I mean, Devontae Parker can't be in this.
I agree. Just one
No.
No.
Okay. Of the receivers that are left,
year. Take Mike Williams and Julian
the
Edelman.
first
out.
two stand out to me the most.
right? I think Keenan gets considered.
Beast. I mean,
Keenan gets considered. Sutton gets considered.
McLaurin and Brown are going to be beasts, but only 1 year.
Right. I mean, the same thing with Debo.
Yep.
That's the thing. And DK, like all those guys could easily be like top 15 receivers next year, but they've just only done it for 1 year. Like,
Probably take. I mean,
I'm not trying to hate on all these guys, but I'm like, how many more would we take over Keenan Allen, Cortland Sutton, and T.Y. Hilton?
yeah, I think you delete the whole.
I don't
list.
think the only one I'd even like DJ Moore's good, but I wouldn't even put him.
Right, but that's the thing. Like, and again, no disrespect to a lot of these guys. Now,
Yeah.
full disrespect to all these guys. I'm just kidding. I just can't see with only 12 spots left, and there's a lot of guys that we're still considering. I don't know if we're putting any of these guys in there, even though they're talented. A lot of them are really young.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I like, do I think next year, here's where it gets tricky for me. Like, I would rather have Debo Samuel than T.Y. Hilton for the year 2020. Like,
Yeah, but
So-
yeah,
so then that's where it becomes tricky. And I love T.Y. Hilton. I'm not trying. I know Colts fans are like, he never gets the respect, and that's true. He hasn't, and he's not going to get it here either. So it's the way it is.
All right, great. Glad we settled that. Never gets the respect, and he's not going to get it here either. All right.
The trend continues.
Moving on.
I think Allen and Sutton, man. After that, it gets so convoluted. and
What if,
tough.
okay, put Allen and Sutton in there.
I agree.
And then if we happen to be fighting the 100 mark, we can revisit them.
Maybe from Moore down, you could delete him. I don't know.
What's that?
From DJ Moore and down. you
Keep
could-
Yeah, because I like Woods and Cup and
I
Sanders.
like a lot of those guys, but
Right. They can't. There's only so many spots.
I
Like,
don't know, man.
bye.
Yeah.
Bye, Felicia. Okay. So we've got handful. We're seriously consider these second year guys are so good that I'm seriously considering them. My personal opinion. There he is. The legend has made it.
What's
I don't
up,
think-
Eric?
Yeah. Can you hear us, Eric? He's getting set up still.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
let him get
Okay. All right. We can't hear
Just
him.
holler at us when you can hear us. But yeah, so to me, when I think about this, I'm like, okay, these guys to me, these second year receivers could be so good that I would honestly be like fine with putting them on the list over guys like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and guys like that. Like, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But there's some projection involved. Like,
right. That's why I say, like, let's add Sutton and Allen. And then if we're
Right.
teetering the line, or if we've got a couple of extra spots, we can revisit it. I feel like you have to add Carson to this list only for the fact that you then have both Carson and Dak on the top 100. So you can continue to watch Twitter burn itself.
Or should we leave one off and then watch Twitter burn itself?
You know, I never thought of it like that.
You know what I'm saying? Because if we leave one off, it's going to get absolutely biblical on the timeline. Like,
I mean,
yeah,
there's some line of scrimmage guys that I feel like I could make a really strong case for that are like just
yeah.
elite type guys.
Akeem Hicks and Calais.
Yeah, those two stand out to me.
Akeem Hicks is good.
Yeah,
He's a tank, right?
He is good.
It's, he had that nasty elbow injury. So, but I still think he's going to come back and probably be really good. Him and Campbell are tough to leave off. I mean, Jensen, I'd make a case for. Pouncey.
How many spots we got left?
8.
8.
Yikes.
We need to hear Eric talk about the DBs.
Yeah, that's true. Croc, can you hear us yet? He's still getting set up, I think. I don't think he can
Okay.
hear.
No. Yeah.
Or maybe he's got his audio off. I
The
don't know.
guys, oh man, the guys that I would really consider would be Campbell, Hicks, Ngakoue, Demario Davis. That's 4.
I'm just not sure I can leave Campbell off. And now next year, Campbell could just fall off a cliff, and that could be
Right,
like-
but he would still be in, like, at the very least somewhere between like 80 and 100.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd probably put Campbell on there.
Okay.
That's probably, at least we get him up there. I
I
feel
feel like
one-
there's really good corners left. I feel like Eric's gonna log on. He's gonna be like, "Yeah, you guys are stupid," and then he's gonna take up like 6 of the spots.
Ah, you
that are
can hear
left.
us now. What's up, Croc?
What's up, guys?
What up, man?
Thanks for joining us, dude. Appreciate it.
Thanks for waiting on me.
Did you sprint? Did you run from the mechanic?
Yeah, I ran. Man, I such a busy morning. I had to drop I took my car to the mechanic, make sure everything was good. Then I took it to the audio spot because this was the only time they had, and I'm getting something installed. But it's right around the corner from my house. So I was like, man, let me just jog over to the crib real quick.
Right. Got you. Well, I'm glad you could make it. I'm sorry it didn't work out initially, but I'm glad you made it. We are in the heated throes of conversation right now. The players that you see above the gray bar are the 92 players we have kind of locked in. If you have a huge issue with any player you see there, speak now and let it be known, and we will reconsider someone if you want. If you're like, this guy is trash, get him out of here. But that's where we're at right now with our process. But where we really need your help, and we saved the DBs for last, so we actually just touched on them and now are ready to revisit them. We need your help sorting out the rest of these DBs that are listed here, including if there's anybody you feel like, man, they should be here and are not. We did cut a couple names off the list. I think just a couple safeties, Micah Hyde and a couple other people. But as you look at this list of corners, do we have it right? Are these 6 corners that are in the locks category here? Are those the 6 top corners in the league, would you say? And who does anybody else like stand out to you? Like they gotta be in the top 100?
Who, I think Darius Slay. I think he's kind of earned like he should be in there. He gets a lot of responsibility. Like compared to a lot of the other corners in the league, I mean, week in and week out, they ask him to follow guys inside, outside, and that's extremely tough. And I know, I hear Richard Sherman's argument on like, he just does what his coaches ask him to do, but it's a whole different beast having to, guard a guy like Keenan Allen on the outside, and then he's in the slot on the left side, and have to follow him in there. Then there's all that space in there. Then he's on the right side, and just to have to like really shadow a guy and really play man to man more times than not. And then for him to be able to make the plays that he makes, and I get it. Like if you look at like PFF, his numbers are probably up and down a little bit. But as far as like, man, his responsibility, man, it's tough. It's tough what they ask him to do. And I think for the most part, he does it at a pretty high level. And I think if other guys were asked to do the same thing that he's asked to do, those are guys we probably wouldn't talk about a lot of guys. So I think Slade, just off of like the responsibility that the Lions gave him, I think he should really kind of be in there, to be honest.
Yeah, that's good context too for what we're talking about, because that's why it's so important to have to understand that part of it, because it is different when you're asked like inside and outside and against number ones. Like the numbers may not be as good. Like you may give up more catches, of course you are, but Brandon, you and I talk about this all the time about how like even with sometimes the PFF, as much as we like them, sometimes the grading scale doesn't account for level of competition and degree of responsibility and how difficult
there's no context.
Right.
And even I talked about Slade guarding Keenan Allen for an entire game, inside, outside. And, he gave up catches. He battled. He did this. He did that. But at the end of the day, when the game was on the line, he got an interception in the end zone that sealed the game.
Yep.
And, yeah, so Slade, I just think just what he's asked to do in comparison to some other guys, I think he's got to be up there. He's got to be up there.
Okay. All right. Brandon, what's your case for Marlon Humphrey? See what Croc thinks of that.
I mean, personally, I just like his style of play. I love how physical he is. He plays inside and outside as well, but I just think, if you're a receiver and you have to go against Marlon Humphrey all game, I think that's going to really wear on you. And I think that there's something to be said for that. Now, I know he's not, the fastest guy, and he could get beat, deep down the field, at times. So that would be, I guess maybe one of the knocks. I'm sure you've seen a lot more of him than I have, but I just like him stylistically. So I was really interested to hear your take on Marlon Humphrey.
Humphreys is another guy I really like. We all saw the battle between him and Odell Beckham and kind of how that played out. I think my biggest question for him is kind of how they are using him, especially since acquiring Marcus Peters. And obviously, you got a guy like Jimmy Smith, who are, those are more predominantly outside guys. And Marlon Humphrey, I guess if, as far as his versatility, that's really cool. But I don't know exactly how much they're, asking of him compared to another guy like Jair Alexander. I know he's young. He hasn't, been in the NFL for a ton of years. Mm-hmm. But again, another guy, what he's asked to do, he's asked to guard the speedy guys. He's asked to guard the big guys, and a lot of times he'll do it for an entire game. Sometimes the game that stands out to me the most was, him on Brandon Cooks and how he guarded him out on every level, whether it's a 5-yard pass, 20-yard pass, or 40-yard pass. He was contesting everything, knocking balls away. He makes guys, even if you catch a pass on him, you earn it more times than not. There are a few times, I think it was the Cowboys game, where I saw him, he had a couple struggles with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper kind of bailed him out on a drop ball that ended up being intercepted by Alexander. But just with how he plays, man, and the swagger in which he plays, how he makes, I really put a lot of stock into guys that make someone work every single play. And
Right.
I think that's who he is. I think his upside, like I know the Packers fan base they'd attack me if I left him off of this top 100 list.
What
But
what
I
do,
really like him.
I'm good with Jared. I love
yeah,
him.
I love Jair too, man. I mean, and Trevor, you feel the same way, right? Jair,
Right.
the GOAT.
Yeah, no, I
Kirk
when I
King.
yeah when I looked at this list, he was one of the first names that popped out to me that it's like, okay, he's when you think of the top 100 players in the league, whether you're super high on him or super low on him, I think he would be in the top 100 of whatever it is. You
Right.
got to admit that.
Do we feel like Pat Pete and Chris Harris, even though they are definitely still good players, do we feel like for this list, their best
man.
days may have passed them by, and so we maybe not considering them anymore?
Yeah, I think definitely Patrick Peterson. I get to watch him twice a year against the 49ers, and I just didn't see it. I didn't see that same Patrick Peterson guy.
Yeah.
Even in the other games I watched this year, it seemed like at first they tried to take a lot of responsibility away from him and set him off in more zone. And then there were games where they did ask him to do more, and I just thought he just got ate up. And I
Right.
didn't even think he really was very, I talked about Alexander, right, making guys work for it every
Right.
play, and I don't even know if I saw that from
Pat.
him. So
Right.
it would be hard for me to say, unless we're talking about reputation,
Right.
it would be hard for me to say that he's a top 100 guy right now.
Right now. Right. Yep. Agree. What about these safeties that you see? So you see the group that we have on there, and
Oh, Tyrann Mathieu got to be top. He got to be a
got
lot.
to be on there.
He's got to be a lot.
We just had a huge discussion about Tyrann Mathieu because we were like, man, he's so good, but also he gives stuff up, but he takes stuff away, and it's like it's one of those balancing act. Kind of you were talking about with Slay, maybe like, but they ask him to do a ton. Like everywhere he's been,
Yeah.
they ask him to do a ton of different stuff.
And sometimes I don't know if he's covering for other people. So if sometimes you see him maybe end up being the closest defender to a big play, it's like, was it actually him or was he trying to cover for somebody else? Because his football IQ and it's really top notch. So sometimes when he gets like, or if he's the closest defender to giving up and a big play just happened, I always say, you know what, I gotta look at the tape first to see if he's covering from somebody and saw something late, because he's scary, man. Obviously my 49ers just in the Super Bowl, and everybody's like, oh, this player and that player, but the player I was scared of the most was Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, he's a big play guy. He can, between matchups and different things, he's able to kind of take away a lot. At any point, kind of like Richard Sherman, where maybe he's not the greatest athlete now, and maybe you can get some plays, but at any point he can really make that big play to change the whole dynamic of the game. And, I think that's Tyrann Mathieu, man. And yeah, I love, just not on the field, but opposite field too, as far as him being a leader and all that, everything that he brings to that secondary, man. Like, that's a team, nobody talked about the Chiefs defense.
Right.
And he really got it turned around really quickly and changed the way I think even the Chiefs defensive players viewed themselves.
Right.
So yeah, Tyrann Mathieu,
Got it.
100, he's got to be in there.
Okay. Yeah, I had him on
But
my
I like
list.
the
when I
list.
ran
I
through
like the
this.
list of the other guys. No arguments. Even the guys like Devin McCourty. I know Harris had the big interception numbers, but even a guy like Devin McCourty and everything that he's asked to do. We talk about responsibility.
Yeah.
The Patriots, I think they put more responsibility on their players than on their back end guys than anyone in the NFL, with all the man match stuff and
And he
it's-
made plays this
yeah,
past year. He had
crazy
picks
switches.
this last year too.
You said what?
He had picks this last year too. He made plays too, McCourty. He had like
Yeah,
5 picks.
McCourty, that's another. Whew. And it's like he just keeps getting better. He's like getting older, but getting better. So I don't know. That's tough. That's tough.
We're in this tough range now. We have 96 spots filled. We have 4 spots left for guys, and we still have some names to consider, obviously, across the board. Let's come back to safety, and I love McCourty too. Let's come back to safety and let's look at these quarterbacks and so we have Dak on and we have Carson Wentz off right now. Trevor believes that the objective with these quarterback rankings should be to rile up the masses. So do we rile them up more by having both on and having them fight about who should have been off, or by splitting them, getting Dak on and getting Wentz off? How do we handle this?
Ooh, yeah. I I had tweeted out the other day and I asked, you know, are we sure that Wentz is better than Dak? Like, we know he's more talented, right? Like, he's more,
Yeah.
you know, the throws that he's able to consistently make and his arm strength and his mobility and the ability to make, you know, throws outside the pocket, like all that's great. But at the end of the day, if you're hurt, you know, often he's missed a lot of time. He hasn't won any significant games, hasn't finished. I mean, he had an opportunity this year against the Seahawks and couldn't finish the game, where even Dak Prescott, I think when I had put that tweet out there, a lot of people said, well, he needs to win. Whereas like, well, at least he's won a playoff game. And
Right.
he's, you know, he's led the team to a 13-3 record. They could have went 14-2 if they didn't sit all their starters on that last game against the Eagles. I think
Yeah.
there's an argument for Dak. And if you're going that route, I mean, I see no issues with having him in there over Carson Wentz. There's a lot of people I feel like that just want to go with what everybody thinks you're supposed to go with. And that's why I think they would have Wentz in there. But
Right.
I mean, really, if you look at Wentz, what has he really done? And I like him. I think he's extremely talented. But
Right.
I need more.
Right.
You know, I need more. And I think even with Dak, where there's still question marks and they don't even really want to pay him, but I've still seen more from Dak than I have Carson Wentz.
To me, Dak was like a top 5 quarterback in the league last year. Like, I don't think it's a stretch to say that. I can't leave a guy like that off the list. Like,
No,
I just can't. Like,
no.
he was too good. And
I feel
here's
like-
what I'll say. I don't think Wentz is definitely worse than Dak or better than Dak. I just think I've seen Dak in an environment where a quarterback can either succeed or fail in, and you can judge him accordingly. And I've seen him succeed. He's good. Like, I don't have any issues saying Dak is good. Is he elite? You know, that we answer that question down the road in his career. Like, we don't know right now. But with Wentz, I have seen him play with poop lately. So I don't know whether he's good or he's not. Like, to the degree that he would need to be considered for this list. That's how I would see it. But I don't know. I know there's different opinions out there.
Okay. I only have a couple more minutes that I can stay on because I got to do a podcast. But
All right, who you fighting? Who you standing on the table for?
so I feel like if we only got 4 spots left, the way that we should do this is look at each position group and identify the only guys who'd be considered, and like take the other names like either further down the list or like put some white space in between them to make it easier to make it decide. So like I would say
Okay.
Carson's probably the only quarterback that we consider at this point. So like I'd move the other 3 kind of away from the list, so it just doesn't look like it's a bunch of clutter.
Okay.
Um,
Does everybody agree with that, or does anybody think that some of these other quarterbacks should be considered?
I mean,
I think that's good.
I think Stafford's
talked about with-
awesome, but I don't know if we're gonna put him on here.
Who?
Stafford.
Stafford.
That's what I was saying. I mean, he's so talented, and I
Yeah.
think he plays at the top. But it's like at some point we still got to get some results, and no playoff wins throughout his entire career, right? Have
Yeah.
the Lions won a playoff game?
No.
You know,
I don't think so.
and at some point, I get it. Maybe it hasn't been the best ran organization. I think he has like the least amount of 100-yard rushers. Like, it's like an amazing stat.
Haven't the Lions like not won a playoff game since like the 90s or something?
Probably like early
Them and
90s,
the Cowboys.
right? Like,
Them and
I'm-
the Cowboys are like the longest teams. I
I'm
think.
looking this up.
no, but
It's
the
like-
Cowboys have actually won. I think the Lions, I don't know if they've won since like Scott Mitchell. Was that his name, the quarterback?
Yeah.
Barry
Remember
Sanders.
that?
I don't know if they've won a playoff game since Scott
Yeah.
Mitchell was playing.
But I don't think the Cowboys have won his playoff game. When was the last
they-
time they won?
The last
They've
time
won.
the last
The
time
Cowboys
the
have won.
Lions won a playoff game, because they only have one playoff win in history, it was in 1991.
Wow.
Jeez.
It's brutal.
Yeah, that is.
Wait, when did the Cowboys last win a playoff game?
I'm looking. Hold on.
Dak won one. They beat the Seahawks.
No,
What-
bro. I don't think so. Wait, did they beat them?
Yeah, they beat the Seahawks.
Yes, they
2
beat the
years ago.
Seahawks. And before
Wait,
then,
when?
it was just 2014.
Yeah, before then, Tony Romo won.
Wait, they won a
Lions.
playoff game?
They won.
Before then, Tony
Okay,
Romo beat the Lions.
He
they.
And then
I'll
that's
tell
when they
you.
had
I'll
the
tell you
catch
their
game.
history right now. They in 2018 they beat the Seahawks in the wild card round. In 2014 they beat the Lions in the wild card round.
And then they
And
won
then-
another one like 2011 or
oh,
something.
in
the Lions, the game that
2000
the refs, yeah.
2009 they beat the Eagles in the wild card round.
Right.
Oh,
that
I
was-
know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking they haven't been to the NFC Championship game. They're one of
Right.
I think only like 3 teams haven't been to a championship game since 2000 or something like that. Like I think I was reading the other day. It was 3 teams in the NFC. That's what it was. And it's the Lions, Washington, and Dallas. I think those are the only teams that haven't been to an NFC Championship game. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, Dallas is not. Neither is the Lions. So big rip.
Anyway,
are we
what you were
considering
saying.
any of these other running backs?
So to me, I think Dalvin Cook is a beast. And Brandon, you said you think Dalvin Cook's a beast. Our only hesitation with Dalvin Cook is that he still has not played a full season. And he's only played 29 games in his career. He's 3 years into his career. That's our only, like on the field, like to me, I just think he's a beast.
I don't think we're putting a running back up here, with 4 slots left.
All right, then move him. Then move him down. Move him down.
Okay.
I don't think we're putting a wide receiver on here, so I would move all of these guys down too. I don't think that we're putting a tight end on there.
No.
I would take the tight ends off, I think.
Yeah. Akeem Hicks is the only defense. I'll defer to Brandon for more of the offensive line guys, but Akeem Hicks is probably the only interior D guy I'd choose. Ngakoue is the only edge guy left I'd choose. Demario Davis. Oh, shoot. Deion Jones is here? Oh, no. Why did you put his name at the bottom? Why would you do this to me?
He's
I
good in
don't have the
coverage.
attention span to do this.
There's too many names to read that list of 3. He's good. He's just not like a dominant player, I think. Like he's a great coverage linebacker, but he misses tackles and he's not that good against the run.
Yeah, but if we're talking
He's
about
okay
top
against
100 players,
You think he should be in there? You think he should be a lock?
yeah,
I don't know.
I feel like him.
I know.
All right, so Marlon Humphrey is the only corner I think that we're still going to consider.
What about Marcus Peters, Croc? What do you think of him? Is it just too much up and down?
It's way too
Talking
much.
about guys that
boomer
don't
bust.
make you work for every rep. That's him.
Yeah,
It's way too much boomer bust with him.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I can't put him in. Byron Jones is a dog, but he doesn't
Now
get
Byron Jones is somebody I consider. I mean, I thought not this past year, but the year before, I thought he was a top 5 corner in the league.
Would you put Hump in
I
over
actually didn't think. I thought he had either the best or second best season that year. Now last year, I thought he had a little bit of a decline,
Mhm.
but I still think he's a tremendous player. And off of that, I view him as somebody that's a top 100, but he hasn't done it. I think there's just been a little bit too much inconsistency, right? I mean, he started off at corner, then moved to safety, then moved to strong safety, then had a terrific year at corner, and then last year it was kind of like whatever. So I
Yeah.
think there's just like we just haven't seen enough of like who exactly Byron Jones is.
Mhm.
This was last year, I'd say 100%, but going into this year, I think I'm okay with leaving him off.
Okay.
And especially if that means like adding a guy like Marlon Humphrey, I
Okay.
definitely leave off Byron Jones. I'm pretty
Okay.
high on Jones.
Okay. So do we feel like looking at this list right now that names that really stand out to us as guys that should be in there, do we feel like Marlon Humphrey and Devin McCourty are pretty high on that list?
I was gonna say McCourty. I mean, out of the guys I'm looking at right now, he would probably be the highest for me personally.
What do you think, Trevor?
who's the highest for me
Out
right
of
now?
all the guys that are left here, yeah.
Demario Davis too.
It would be Davis and Ngakoue and Wentz. Like those would be the 3 that I'd probably say need
Okay.
to be listed as top 100 players in the NFL.
I played with Demario Davis on the Jets. He was on the Jets when I was there.
Good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was there.
He's even better now than he was.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Like,
he's
way better.
awesome.
And I
now.
thought he was solid, but they had
Right.
who was the other linebacker? Not Vilma. Harris. What's Harris' first?
David Harris.
Oh, yeah, Michigan.
Yeah.
I don't remember his first name. It
David.
was Harris though.
David?
I had been there for a little while.
Yeah,
David Harris, I think.
Michigan. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He
But
was
yeah, Demario Davis, he was good. He was good then, but now he's kind of turned it up to where when you watch the Saints, I feel like he jumps out. Like
Right.
every game I've watched with the Saints, he jumps out with the attitude that he plays with, the confidence.
I agree. With that.
Seems like he's always doing something. He's always around the ball.
For me, my number one guy is Akeem Hicks.
I was
So-
going to ask you next. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Akeem would be the next guy.
Six is dominant.
There's a lot of really good ones. I gotta pop off, y'all. I gotta do a podcast, but
All right.
let me know who the last 4 are because I'm
All
gonna
right.
be thinking about it the entire time during the pod.
All right, we will. Thanks, brother.
See y'all.
Offensive line, would there be anybody you would take over, like guys like Hicks or? I like all these guys. I just don't know if anybody jumps out at me as like they should be in on the interior O line at least.
I mean, it's tough. I off that, I mean, I lean Marquise Pouncey and probably, gosh, I don't know, man. I'd probably take Zeitler off, and I mean that's tough with those
Shaq
guys.
probably isn't going to make it, but he's good.
I'd take Shaq over, but Batonio personally.
Huh? Wow.
That's just me. I mean,
I don't know if any of these guys that are left would make. Would Jensen be your top guy to make it out of the interior offensive linemen that are left?
I'd probably go Pouncey, man, because he's been doing it for
Pounce.
so long, and I don't see him just dropping off next year. I'd probably put him and Tooney up there because Tooney's had 2 years in a row now where he's been very good. And then these tackles are really tough because I think all three are worthy. So that's just tough, over there.
These tackles are tough, dude. Tough.
Yeah, they're all very good players,
Yeah. I mean, I think if you told me Bulaga was going to be healthy, like period, then I'd probably take him. But
Yep. And
I don't
he
know.
should be healthy. I mean, it's just his track record, is
and
tough.
Tunsil is, looks like he's on the upswing. So that's tough. I just don't know if I would take any of the receivers, given who else is here, or the running backs.
Receivers and running backs were good on.
And receivers, there's already the most players at that
Right.
position.
16 guys on the list. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think, that's a good cutoff there.
Yeah. So I say it sounds like Demario Davis has a lot of push for him, a lot of push for Marlon Humphrey, and a lot of push for McCourty. Do we go with those three and Akeem Hicks maybe as the
I mean, I like Humphrey, but is Humphrey better player than these tackles? I don't know. I mean, that's tough. I think McCourty. Would you pick McCourty over Humphrey, Eric, if you had to pick?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would too.
we probably
would
do
too.
that. And
Yeah.
Demario.
Now, any love for my guy Marcus Williams? I know I got to stand on the table for him because I think he's really good, but no love for him as a top 100 guy.
I really haven't seen him.
You haven't seen him much. Croc, have you seen him?
Which one?
Marcus Williams, the Saints safety.
I know he's really good. I just think when you look at the safety position, with the guys that are there, there's a lot of good safeties right now.
That's the thing. There's so many good ones.
I think you can justify not having him on this list. And maybe
Yeah.
if he has another really good year, then like next year, he might unseat a guy like Devin McCourty. But,
Right.
I think right now, I'm good with leaving him off. And I think some people might look at Anthony Harris. He had 7 interceptions, I believe, last year.
Something
He's
like
somebody
six and maybe 3 the year before. I think he has 9 over the
Okay,
last year.
yeah. So he's been taking the ball away, but even then, I just look at that group of safeties right now, and it's tough to. I think that's it right there. That's
Right.
an elite group.
So who's next? So we got 3 spots left. Who stands out? Who would be your next player in?
Maybe Laramie Tunsil?
I love Tunsil too. He was my number 1 player in that class, so I'm a little biased, but he is a little bit up and down still at times. You think Trent Brown? Would you take Trent Brown over Tunsil? Still, Brandon, I know right and left side, but
I mean, I think Brown, obviously a tremendous pass protector, but
yeah,
I think he's a little too inconsistent in the run game. I think
Yeah.
he is one of the better tackles, but I think you could justify not having him on this list. I mean, what accolades has he had? You look at these other guys. Trent Williams right now is the last guy on this list, and I mean, dude's amazing. You got Lane
Right.
Johnson, you got Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
I think you're good. Not when you look at that group, I think you're okay with not having him
Him on there.
on that list.
It's tough, man. I mean,
It's really hard.
very good. Then if you want to take him off, then we got to talk about Bulaga because he's been one of the most underrated guys in the league for a long time. And pass protecting for Aaron Rodgers is probably the hardest quarterback
That's
in the
true.
league to pass protect for. And
Because he moves around a ton.
I
and
think
he holds
Akeem
the
Hicks
ball
is.
forever.
I think he's one where you
Hicks
can
has to
justify
be on.
definitely having him in the top 100.
Yeah,
I
it seems
think-
like we all kind of agree Akeem Hicks is really good, and even though he was hurt last year,
Yeah.
I think Hicks should be on
he's not like he's ever been. I mean, recently anyway, been
because he's
bad,
been
so-
dominant for multiple years in a row. So
Okay, right.
you know,
So two
and-
spots left: Marlon Humphrey, Demario Davis, Yannick Ngakwe, and these offensive linemen.
I think if you're going to have DeMarcus Lawrence, I'm not as high as on Lawrence.
Yeah,
I'm not as high on Lawrence. I think he had a great year
yeah,
a couple years ago where he ended up getting paid. And then it seems like from there, he's kind of tailed off a little bit. My brother's a big Cowboy fan, so I had this argument with him, but I'm like, dude, like you play every game and you have 5 sacks and you're an edge rusher. Like to me, that's a little alarming. Well, he's getting doubled. I'm like, well, every good edge rusher gets doubled.
hmm
Like that shouldn't, be a reason
Right.
why this guy is only producing 5 sacks. And I get it. Like sacks aren't everything. Even if he had like 8 or 9 or something like that, I respect it a little bit more. But to have 5 and you're an edge rusher,
yeah.
I mean, that's, even, okay, maybe he gets QB hits or pressures and stuff like that. But 5, to me, that's kind of like, it's almost unacceptable. And
Right.
I really feel like for the most part, why people view him in such a high, level is
Mhm.
because he had that one year where he had a bunch of sacks. I want to say like 14 sacks and whatnot. Outside that, I want to say he's had one where he's had a decent amount of sacks, but
well, he averages 9.5 sacks a year over his last 4 years as a
over his
starter.
last 4. But how much of that has kind of the 1 year kind of helped those averages go up?
How many have that 1 year?
He had 14.5. He's had 10.5. He's had 8 and 5.
How many 16-game seasons has he played?
I think 3 or 4.
But you see what I'm saying? Like you have 14 and then you said what, 10.5? And then from there it's just like 8.5 and 5. Like that's not.
Mhm. It's not that sustained dominance that we've seen from other guys. We put Melvin Ingram in there, and he hasn't had like monster numbers either every year, but he is like a chess piece, versatile. They run him on games inside, like they line him up over the A gaps, they blitz, they move him around all over the place. He hardly ever is just like every snap putting his hand in the dirt and teeing off on guys. But we use the same, the similar sack argument with a guy like Brandon Graham. Like been a good player for forever, really good against the run, good pass rusher, lots of pressure, but doesn't get sacked. I mean, he's never had a double-digit sack season, I don't think. Like
I look
that's
at like
I think if I had to choose between, even like Frank Clark,
mhm.
I like him more than DeMarcus Lawrence.
He was kind of down last year too, though, numbers wise, I feel like.
Down, but even then, the down year for him, okay, 8 sacks.
Yeah. That's tough. Zadarius Smith is kind of like Zadarius Smith never did, not much of anything until this past season. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was just, he was a solid player, but that's where it gets tricky. But he was so good this past year that you're like, okay, like, and like same for Lawrence. Like when Lawrence had that best season, like I thought he was one of the best defensive players in the league. He's like a dog who gets after it. He's good against the run. I don't know, Brandon, you like Lawrence a good bit, right?
Yeah, when I go to the offensive line masterminds clinic and we, it's like me in a room and I just listen to these guys, like, 40, 50 NFL starting offensive linemen. I hear them talk about the rushers that they're, they most respect. D-Law is always on the list. It's because in terms of not looking at numbers, because I think that's, you can look at numbers and factor it in, but I think it goes deeper than that. You have to look at the film and watch the pass rush moves that he's executing. And I know last year, he did get doubled a lot and he didn't have the sack numbers, but his cross chop move and then his inside and outside spins and what he does on stunts, those things put a lot of fear into offensive linemen. And he's very good on stunts, especially end tackle stunts when he's going first and picking off the guard. He comes like a wrecking ball and really opens up a lot of opportunities for other guys. But his cross chop move is one of the most potent, deadly pass rush moves in the entire NFL. And he beats elite players with it. Look at Lane Johnson last year. He ate Lane Johnson alive on a couple rushes with that move. D-Law to me, and he's a great run defender. So I don't know. I mean, I love D-Law, but I like Frank Clark a lot too. I mean, I think
Mhm.
that's kind of a toss-up, really, because I mean, I'm a big Frank Clark fan too.
And
So
both those guys are more balanced than a Yannick. Yannick Ngakoue is.
I'd pick Frank over Yannick, myself.
I honestly probably would too. And I know Frank he was MIA some last year, and he's a little up and down maybe. But for that part, or before that, in his career, I feel like he's been.
Ngakwe
Really?
has the cross chop move too, but he's not as good against the run, and he's not
Right.
as physical or strong as DeMarcus Lawrence. And so, it just, yeah, I think Clark and D-Law would be a good argument or maybe both of them, but that's kind of where I'd cut it off for them.
Okay, well, who on the bottom who stands out the most of the guys on the bottom that needs to go up? Like, to me, I almost would rather have the linemen 2 spots left. I would almost rather leave the quarterbacks off, because I would pick Stafford. So to me, I'd almost leave the quarterbacks off and go with like a Demario Davis and a Frank Clark or a Laramie Tunsil and a Marlon Humphrey or something.
I could see. I mean, and linebacker. Well, aside from tight end, kind of has the least amount of players on here.
Mm,
I could see Demario Davis being on there and people really respecting that.
Yeah.
And I think he is one of the more underappreciated players probably in the
Right.
league, especially with what he's brought to that Saints defense everybody's
Everybody
always
gets-
talked about the offense, but I think that
Right.
defense is starting to step up, and I think he's been like really a leader and focal point of that
Right.
defense.
I agree. There's the cultural aspect of things. Brandon and I were talking about this earlier with some of the safeties, Jamal Adams and the way he's used, and the cultural aspect of what they add to the locker room and guys on the field and stuff. It's hard to quantify it when you break down just whether they're good or they're bad at certain things. So we all in agreement Demario Davis goes up.
Yeah.
All right. Demario Davis is spot number 99, I believe.
All
Who
right.
is getting the 100th spot?
I think it's Frank Clark or one of those tackles, like Bulaga or Tunsil.
I think you could make an argument for Derrick Henry too. He just might be the 100th guy.
This was tough because Ted wanted to put earlier when Ted was on, he wanted to put Derrick Henry in right away. And I was just like, man, I just like, he doesn't make an impact in the passing game. And to me, that is just so big for a running back because so many guys are successful on the ground, but what kind of an impact do you make in the passing game and in space? And he just doesn't make one.
Well, I'm
And-
not even a Derrick Henry guy. Like, I don't
Yeah.
like Derrick Henry. I hate his running style. But
How do you do?
he did carry a team.
Yeah.
And even the year before with Marcus Mariota or whenever that playoff year was, it was like, a lot of it is on the shoulders of Derrick Henry. I think this year, without him ripping off some of those big runs and the consistency at which he ran the ball, it seemed like he never kind of really went away. It was
Right.
like people always had to respect him. And it didn't matter what quarterback was behind him. I think that's kind of big, man. Like,
But wouldn't you take Dalvin Cook over him if you needed a running back for your team tomorrow? Like, wouldn't you take Dalvin Cook?
yeah, because he's more of my type.
Yeah.
But I can't discount what Derrick Henry has meant to
Right.
that team. Because I saw Dalvin Cook go up against the Niners and have 12 rushing yards for an entire game.
Yeah, that's
When
true.
when I watched Derrick Henry, even in a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, where the Titans kind of went away
Mhm.
from, using him, he still had like 70 yards in the first half. And we're talking about in the down game where, he wasn't even utilized as much as he probably should have been.
Yeah.
So
And we
yeah,
get
it's
how
kind of
much of
hard.
that's the O line also mowing people down. I mean, that's part of it. But
That's part of
Henry's
it.
also done a good job of running through contact and stuff, running through
Yeah.
trash in the box.
And this is also for 2020 and what we're expecting of them, not just what they did in 2019. So can we
Mhm.
expect Henry to do that again in 2020? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the criteria, right? We're not just ranking 2019.
Right.
We're also-
Yeah, we're also looking ahead a little bit.
These are the best players, the top 100 players in 2020.
Right, that we're expecting to be in 2020 to be
Right.
in that
Which
group.
Henry
Yeah,
could-
I mean, so if we're going off of that, then it would be a little bit harder to leave Dalvin Cook off because I just think that he's gonna continue to have another terrific season. He's one of
Yeah.
my favorite running backs to
Me
watch in
too.
the league.
he's my favorite.
Yeah.
I love
It
Cook.
seems silly to leave him off, but yeah, him only playing 29 games is definitely a
The injuries, you know.
yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that would look at that and say, wow, like Dalvin Cook's on there, but Derrick Henry's not. And you know what I'm saying? Like, but again, if we want
Right.
to create that type of conversation,
I'm here for that.
you know, and you know, we'll just make John have to take that on and have to explain
Just be
himself
like,
on
"Oh,
that
yeah,
one.
was Ledyard. Ledyard made that decision. I'm fine with Cook in the last spot. I'd feel great about that. I love these other guys too.
What
I
about
love
Pouncey?
I love Pounce. I mean, I'm a
Pound
Steeler
should be
guy.
on, in my opinion. I mean,
Who do we take off then to get him on?
nobody. You just add him as 100. You know,
Oh, okay. So Pounce is on and
I
Cook
mean,
is off. The
Pouncey's,
tackles are off.
you know, he's just a really good center, man. I don't know. And like we said, like I found out, you know, he was dealing with an ankle and a hand last year. So maybe, you know, there was some of the year where he wasn't his normal
true.
self. But
Right.
I mean, year in, year out, you could pretty much count on Marquise Pouncey being one of the 5 or 6 best centers in the league. So
If we put him on here, I'm gonna get called a homer because I'm a Steeler guy. People are gonna see him on the list. They're gonna be like, "Oh, you know, Ledyard did that." You know, I'm gonna have to face that music.
I think.
What's that?
So consistent. That one's easy to defend, I think.
Yeah, right. Consistently had a really good career. You know, last year, one of the big issues and why fans will get on him so much is because I have no idea what's going on. But last year, snaps were a huge issue. Like he could, like from shotgun, he was putting the ball between guys' feet on the ground or throwing it over their head, and it was an issue in 6 or 7 games last year, and that was just like so frustrating.
He had a hand
everybody.
injury. You
The
know,
hand injury, right? And then you're talking about the hand injury. I didn't know about the hand injury, and so that's like
and he didn't really have snap issues prior
no.
to last year either. So it was kind of an anomaly.
It was very much an anomaly. I've never even thought about snap issues with Pounce before this year. So that's where I almost think when I usually have a hand injury, I'm almost like, man, maybe we bet on the bigger sample size here. So
yeah, if we're, you know, that's why like if it's for
it's
2000,
so hard.
Yeah, it's tough.
Josh Jacobs is another one where, you know, if we're looking forward,
Right.
it's tough. I mean, how many rookies are on this list?
Right.
Are
So
there-
here's a question for everybody. Ted was bullish on Kenny Golladay. I also love Kenny Golladay. But I think I would take Cortland Sutton and Keenan Allen. I don't know.
I didn't even see Galladay on there. Huh.
He's bullish on Golladay.
I like
I
Golladay.
love Golladay too. He's got unbelievable ball skills. I don't want to go through the whole list looking for guys to pull off, but
yeah,
taking him off.
Galladay, I could,
I don't know.
when I
It's-
look at the list, I could probably
He
do
stands
without
out
him.
as the guy who shouldn't be there.
So it would be like Golladay off, unless somebody else stands out. Somebody Golladay off, Cook, and Pounce on.
I'm good with that. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, the other name that stands out to me, and I love him, but again, we're talking top 100, and I think he'd be in 110 for me. But Melvin Ingram, is he a top 100 guy? He's a good player, no doubt. He's a really good player, but when I just think about like whether I'd rather have Frank Clark or Melvin Ingram right now, or even a Laramie Tunsil and a Melvin Ingram.
Yeah, I'm good with taking him off for Frank Clark. You know, or
How do you feel about that, Croc?
Yeah, I like Frank Clark more than,
Okay,
and it really goes off of how much do I hate you, and I hate Frank Clark a lot more than I hate Melvin Ingram.
that's right.
So saying that, I think Frank Clark's the better football player.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
fair.
how I think about it as a Steeler guy too. Okay, so Clark's on now. So what about even? Are we like we feel Saffold and Scherf over Pouncey and Bulaga or Brown or Tunsil?
Yeah, I mean, Saffold last year, man. I mean, he was just mowing guys down in the
Yeah,
run game, and
yeah.
I mean, he's a huge reason for Henry's success.
Right. I was gonna say it'd be ridiculous if we're talking all this stuff and then we don't even have a Tennessee offensive lineman up there. You know, if we're keeping Henry off and don't even.
He's got to be on there.
We don't have we took Luan's name off, but he's also a really good player that I'd consider. But
Yeah, worth mentioning, but
but I just I couldn't put him in over, Bulaga or Brown or
I
Bulaga.
feel like Galladay, man, has to maybe come off. I don't know. That's who I would pick.
You think so too, Croc? As you look through this list, I see you looking like, do you think Galladay is the name that jumps out of you? Like, he's a good player for sure, but maybe not a top 100 player.
Yeah, I mean, considering a lot of the other guys, but then it's like Galladay, Sutton. I think they're kind of the same.
Mhm.
They're in the same kind of position compared to all the other receivers. And, we're just looking at the receivers and kind of how I would rank those guys up there. And it's like, when you look at the list, I think Galladay and Sutton are the two that, I could do without, where I think they are good football players, but maybe I just need to see a little bit more from them.
That's
you
fair.
know, I just think, especially like, at the end of the day, in the NFL, it's a passing league. So
Mhm.
some of these receivers, especially when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, I think you're bound to have a year like Galladay did. Okay, you had a 1,200-yard season. I just would like to see it again.
Mhm.
Like, is that you? That's what I would. Is it him? And I just would have to see that again from him.
Right.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
look at the receivers on this list, man. I mean, these are big dogs.
Right. Is he
When
on
you
that
go to
level?
this-
Like, this is like you said, this is big dog territory. Like you're talking, I mean, I don't know if Galladay. Now, I might stand on the table for Cortland Sutton, which is ironic because
I would too. I'm bullish on Sutton, but
I was kind of anti Sutton when he came out too, and like I didn't think his college tape was good enough to get the ton of hype he was deserving. But
Yeah, no, I liked him then. I like him now. I just,
Yeah.
you're looking at the top 100,
Man,
and you end
gotta
up
make
leaving
some
off
tough
guys like
choices.
Marlon Humphrey. Like, would I leave Humphrey off for Kenny Galladay? Like, I don't think so. No.
yeah. Oh man, this is
I
tough.
put all three tackles on before Galladay. Or Galladay personally.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I like Galladay.
Okay, so it seems like we're in agreement enough to take Galladay down, even though heck of a player. I really like. He was one of the players I grew an appreciation for, I think, the most this past season. So really, good player. But now we've got what, 3 spots? Do we feel like Pouncey is in? Two spots. We got 98 guys on the list right now.
I think with the subtraction of Galladay, I think you can add a guy like Marlon Humphrey.
Okay. How do you feel about that, Brandon? I know you want the
Yeah,
tackles in there too.
I like Humphrey a lot, so yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, Humphrey, and then Pouncey
I think Pouncey should
for
probably
100.
Yeah, I mean, if you're considering positional value, then you pick a tackle, obviously. But just purely the player, I'd go Pouncey.
I think it's just purely the player at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go
Yeah.
Pouncey.
Pouncey, all right, Pouncey. And then first guys off would be Wentz. I'll
That's still tough, but
we are gonna get. I'm telling him that was Croc came onto the show and he said, "Listen, can't put Carson on or I'm logging off."
I got it. It's like, come on.
I
Wentz.
agree though. To me, it's like, I don't know if it's Wentz's fault, but I have to know it isn't his fault. Like, I have to know that he can rise above the bad situation or do great in a good situation for me to feel like including him over. Like, I mean, we can barely get to 100. Like, it's so hard.
Right. Well,
I mean-
you look at Wentz, and I think his career it's kind of similar to that of like a Matthew Stafford,
Mhm.
whereas like we all know you're extremely talented. We all know that you're probably a top 5 talented quarterback in the league. Like
Yeah.
my 49ers head coach is Kyle Shanahan. I'd take Carson Wentz or Matthew Stafford in a heartbeat and feel like we can win the Super Bowl with them. But if we're kind of just judging off of what they have done,
Yeah.
and
Is
in
anything else
comparison
is
to the
projection?
other guys that are on this list,
Right.
even a guy like Dak Prescott, who might even, people might be like, wow, how do you have Prescott and not some of these other guys? But it's just like, I think he's just been a little bit more consistently successful than Wentz, And I think Wentz right now, I think it's more of everybody just knows he's extremely talented.
Yeah.
And but it's kind of hollow a little bit, you know?
Right. Well, it's the most controversial thing about our list to me is that we have 4 quarterbacks that most people would just put in automatically because of their position off the list. Now, we weren't really doing positional value other than not including fullbacks and specialists. So I'm very fine with that, the fact that we have those 4 off. But to me, those are that stands out as like, okay, that's going to be we have 4 like really good quarterbacks, that didn't make the list. But it's, again, I think people bump up the value because of the position, but we're not really doing that here. We're not saying if there was a draft of the whole league right now, who would you like? Obviously, we're all taking quarterbacks. Like, we're not crazy, but that's not how we're doing this. Like, we're just talking about like who are the best players at their positions, especially those certain positions, and how they stack up and everything. And so right now, I just feel like that like Stafford, to me, Ben is like the injury. Like, I think it's just a wait and see type of thing with him. We got to save ourselves a spot. He gives us an easy out. I don't think he's like good and dominant enough right now anyway that we would clearly put him in. Ryan definitely fell off a little bit last year. How does he bounce back? Stafford was hurt after a great year last year. How does he bounce back? So I think we have easy outs for those in terms of like explaining why, like when you're making a list like this, you got to cut it down. Wentz is the one I think we've kind of explained our position on so far. And I really like him obviously a lot, but to me, those are the guys that stand out as like first guys out. Those guys, Dalvin Cook, Galladay, Tunsil, Bulaga Brown, Yannick, even Ingram to a degree.
The more I look at him, man, it's tough to have Bulaga off the list. I mean, if you're a top 5 guy at your position in the NFL, I feel like you should be on here. I mean, he's a top 5 right tackle in the league.
Do you think
it's Lane, Mitch, Ramczyk? Those are the top 3.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's Collins, Bulaga, and Brown. I mean, those are
Hey, somebody had just said it's kind of disrespectful. I just looked at the chat. I don't know if you guys are looking at any.
I just
comments.
looked, yeah.
Mhm.
It's kind of disrespectful to not even mention Juju Smith. And I think they're right. I mean, but he had this down year, and it's like everybody was waiting to see what would he do without Antonio Brown. And it was just kind of like, I know he dealt with injuries and stuff like that, but it was just very underwhelming. I mean, it's tough. Bad quarterback situation with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, right. And then he was hurt.
To not even mention him, we got all these other young guys, and I don't see.
Right. Well, we had him on the initial list. We've cut the list down. There was probably like 20 receivers we cut off.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was on there. I don't know when that comment was made, if he was on there, but he was originally. We didn't talk about him much though, because it was just kind of like there's like literally like 40 receivers. Like it was like, okay. But you're right. If we would have done this list before last season, he probably would have been on it. Like,
100%.
he started off his career. He's unbelievable. And this past year was bad. Like he had a ton of drops. He didn't look like a number 1 receiver when he was healthy. Then he wasn't healthy very much of the season. And the quarterback play was horrible. So it was definitely not all on him, but also it wasn't like he played great either. So it gives me enough pause to, in this exercise, leave him off. But if he bounced back and has like this great year, his numbers for his age are going to be like best all time type of track record because he's so young when he entered the league, kind of like a Donnell Hunter situation but only for a wideout. So yeah, I love Juju, but I'm glad I've been looking at the chat too, like off and on, and people, some people clamoring for Wentz for sure. And Jair got a lot of love. So did Demario Davis actually. And then we put him on. So
I see Cooper Kupp. I saw Cooper Kupp's name in there.
Yeah, his name. Yeah, he's another good one. But
that's another one where
I know
Kupp or Sutton. I don't know. Like
really,
I don't know.
I'm a Steeler guy. Like you said, you thought the Niners go up against Dalvin Cook or whatever, and I'm a Steeler guy, and they literally blanked Kupp. I mean, he didn't even have a catch in the game. Like they just shut him down, and he's good. Like he's definitely good, but I'm like, okay, like he's good, but can you take him away? Like I saw
the Niners shut him down too, especially in the first meeting.
So he's good for sure. Like I'm not, but again, it's like I probably wouldn't put him over any of these second year guys or. Even DJ Moore, or, T.Y. Hilton.
I like DJ Moore.
He's good though. I don't know. The receiver position is loaded. I mean, you could make an argument for a bunch of these guys and still be fine. But I think that's it, fellas. I mean, I think we got our top 100. And unless Brandon, do you think Brian Bulaga, would you? Here's my question, I guess. Brian Bulaga, would you take him over and take a Brandon Scherf off the list because of the injuries, like you mentioned before? And also, do you think Brian Bulaga is a good enough run blocker, and how big a consideration does that get? I know they don't run at all.
Yeah, I definitely think he's a good enough run blocker.
Okay.
But we should probably do that just because, I mean, they're both, injury prone, and they have been, throughout their career. But, if you're looking at right guards and right tackles, I think now that Yonda's out of the game, I mean, Scherf is probably a top 3 or 4 right guard in the league, and Bulaga's like the 5th or 4th best right tackle in the league. So it's so tough, man. I mean,
Yeah.
either way, we're going to be leaving off a guy who should probably be on there. So
Right.
I don't know. We could probably just leave it.
Yeah. I say we just leave it. I think that's our top 100. Great work, gentlemen. This was tough. This was not a easy exercise at all. And you could make a case for you could probably make a good case for 30 more names, maybe even as many as 50 more names. And there will be fluidity year to year. And who knows, maybe we'll even revisit this next year and see how he did and see how we are looking forward to 2021. We'll see. But thanks to all the fans who joined us today. And it was a lot of fun. We had a blast with it. Thanks also to both of you for jumping on and joining and your insight too on this. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it so much. And we'll catch you all later.